Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Griffin. I lead events and operations for the RIoT organization, and we're very thankful to have you here today for week 1 of Developer Month. This particular week is focused on IoT trends, and we are super excited to have Wake Tech Community College here with us, Aero Electronics, Aurora and PUI Audio, as well as DNA Group here with us today. A special huge thanks to Crosscom and Don Shin and his team for sponsoring this session, and the wonderful Bluetooth sleep headphones and 3D eye mask that is available for prize today. Just a couple quick housekeeping rules. This session will be recorded, and if you have any questions for any of our speakers or sponsors, please do put those in the chat box and we will make sure that those are answered. But without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Dr. Keith from Wake Tech Community College. Thanks for being here with us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Keith Babuszczak, Provost of IT Programs and Chief Campus Officer here at the RTP Campus of Wake Tech. We're starting things off a little differently on Developer Month than we normally would, but I still want to show you around the campus a little bit, tell you about our IT programs, and we'll give you a preview of some things that are to come. So I've got my face covering, you're comfortably at home or wherever you are watching this presentation today, so come on, let's go take a look around inside. Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and see, oh look at all the squares. There's so many people here today. Thanks so much. One of my favorite parts of hosting Developer Day last year was kind of welcoming everyone to the RTP campus, to welcome you here, to show you around. That was a little virtual tour there, and you know, everyone's always welcome to drive by, take a look at our progress of RT2, and I'm definitely happy to share some more information about that. So welcome. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Caroline and all of RIoT for hosting us today. I do have a PowerPoint too, because, you know, it's a presentation and why not have a PowerPoint. So as I get that started, we've got President Scott Rawls on presenting with us as well. So I'll let him introduce himself while I click around a little bit.
Hi everybody, I'm Scott Rawls. I'm at our Southern campus right now. It's great to be with you. We really appreciate this partnership with NC RIoT. It's a great group for us to partner with, and we appreciate being part of Development Day today, and for you to see some of the things. We're excited about what's happening with Wake Tech in some of the areas that you pay attention to. So we're thankful to be able to talk about that for just a little while, but thanks for including us and having us this morning.
Absolutely. So new thing on the screen, there's the presentation. The way we'll talk about today, we've done the introduction and welcome. I want to focus a little while on the pathways, ladders, and what I'm calling the Wake Tech fit, like all the different ways that we fit in to training, education, skill development, workforce development, and career advancement. And we'll tell you a little bit about our programs, and Scott will also talk a little bit about the plans of RT2 and Eastern Wake Campus that we've just announced. As Caroline mentioned, feel free to mention things into the chat if you have any questions. I'll post some things as well. And if I don't catch your chat because we're too busy talking, Caroline says she'll jump in and mention some things and ask for us. So we'll definitely answer all of your questions. So one thing I'd like to start off with is, many people think that career pathways look a lot like this. It's very measured. There's a lot of skill development. It's kind of even steps up a ladder. I have a tendency to feel that career pathways sometimes feel a bit like this. You're running around a bit, lots of things coming your way, lots of tools for you to take advantage of. But what I really want to talk about and what we have here at Wake Tech are kind of an economic mobility pathway. And this is the model that we're using to kind of show starting points, stopping points, and the supports that we have. So I'll let Scott talk a little bit about this graphic and the general theme about career pathways that we have at Wake Tech.
Yeah, and we would never expect you to understand this graphic, but I think just stepping back and sort of the role with Wake Tech, and I think why we're important in this region. Ours is a unique region. Ours is a technology region. For my friends outside this region who don't know us, I will often say that this region is America's most livable technology hub. And because of that, it has been a great magnet and it's been an economic powerhouse in that regard. Perhaps many of us are here because of that. And in that way, we attract folks from all over the world who want to come live here and want to come work here. And that's one of the things that makes us known nationally for who we are. A place that folks don't know that sometimes we're a little more challenged than they would anticipate is when you look at the statistics. Economist at Harvard University spent a lot of time at this recently. Wake County, our region, is not very strong if you grow up here and you don't grow up with means in terms of moving forward economically. In fact, ours is one of the rated by, in that regard, one of the worst metro regions for moving forward. In other words, not being poor if you grow up a little poor. So while we're a great magnet to pull people into opportunities, we're not necessarily recognized as a great ladder for folks who live here or live around here. And that's something that we want to help overcome. And so that's what makes us unique somewhat. We see ourselves as a ladder college. That's our role. To the people who come to Wake Tech, live around Wake Tech, live around this county, and they're going to stay around here, but they want the opportunities that are here. And for us, that means we have to help ladder them to that point. And so we don't just talk about training programs or degrees. We often talk about ladders, because a training program may help folks on the bottom, with the bottom rungs of a ladder, but it's hard to progress and promote. Degrees sometimes are so far out there for some folks that it just doesn't seem feasible. So how do we piece that together? Our roadmap that you see here just indicates some of the things that we put particular emphasis on because of who we are at Wake Tech. One is reaching out into underserved populations, those areas of the county where people may not be as used to higher ed opportunities. How do we reach out? This is where we use our reach and rally. You'll see these funny little things here that look like rumble strips and bumper guards. That's because they are rumble strips and bumper guards. For our students, we have to figure out how to make sure they don't, if they're starting to verge off the road, we know how to get them back. And sometimes for our students who are lower income, something that can cause them to spin out maybe less than $500 issue, and we're trying to keep them back in there and then cross our finish line. But you will see our finish line doesn't stop in terms of with us. Our students don't really come to Wake Tech to get our degrees. They come through Wake Tech to get to those opportunities they're looking for. And for most of those are job related. So we pay attention to what's the job opportunities, what are they earning after they leave, and then transfer opportunities. And for many areas like IT, students don't want to just stop with us, and that's why we've worked so diligently in terms of transfer opportunities, transfer pathways, in all our skill-based technology programs, a particular focus that's unique to Wake Tech. So that's what we mean by ladders, and how do we ladder students into those opportunities, and we appreciate your how you all work with us in that regard. Keith, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, Scott, thank you. So a couple of the next slides are really to illustrate how that all works. But what we want to hear from you first is tell us a little bit about some skills. So I have a poll everywhere, and I'm trying with the first presentation to use every technology possible just to see how well Zoom does or doesn't work. So we'll try this. I'll click here, and this is a poll, and I will add into the chat the poll link. Or you can type it in. Let me grab that real quick, and we'll type in. If you can also go to the link that's on the screen as well. But there's the link, and we'd like to hear from you about what skills and qualifications are the most important for entry-level positions. You can type in your answers, and then you'll see kind of thumbs up and thumbs down to upvote or downvote other answers too. And it'll be interesting to kind of hear what people have to say about their what we're thinking as a group about important skills and qualifications. Go ahead and type it, Aparna, I see that you typed it into the chat. Go ahead and click on the link and type it into, oh, it doesn't look like I did it to Amber. Let me send it to everyone. There we go. There's the link right there, and click on the link, and you should be able to enter in some feedback for us about skills and qualifications. And again, you can type in your own answers, or you can up and down vote others to kind of rank order these. You know, what's not surprising here is that we're seeing a lot of conversations around soft skills, saying that these skills are very important, as well as some technical skills. There is another question coming up, so I'll give us another 30 seconds or so to wrap up what your thoughts are and to up and down vote other answers. And it's all anonymous, so you don't feel like you're hurting someone's feeling if you're downvoting or upvoting things. That's great. Thank you. Really good feedback. Let's go to the next one then, and I will activate this one and post this link into the chat as well. This is the idea. So one thing I'm focusing on with our non-credit programs and even our, oops, that wasn't the right button. Let's go back to that. Yes, share that. I meant to go into the chat. Here is, oh, but I see Tom has asked a question. I'll go ahead and post this and answer Tom's question at the same time. How do you bring the important soft skills into your more technically oriented courses? Is that something Wake Tech blends into each course? And it is. You know, we have a lot of resources through career employment resources. They help with kind of soft skill development, resume writing, and interviewing skills. But also in many of our courses, they do work in teams. They're responsible for their own learning in many ways, for documentation. So they also have to do presentations and things like that. So we do reinforce that, and we're actually working stronger all the time to add those soft skills into the curriculum. We're also using mentors, and that's something that we really like to have, is that having business partners work as mentors with our students really help. And we have a virtual internship program that we're doing in conjunction with Northeastern University, where we're having mentors work with our software development and capstone students in programming. And that's really helped as well. So thanks, Tom, for your question. With this, this is one place we're thinking of, is how we're preparing students not just for their first job, but we have plenty of opportunities for students to get their next job. For example, yesterday I found out in our cloud infrastructure program, the median age of students in that program is 33. So we're really preparing students not just for their first job, and many people think as colleges coming out of Wake Tech, they might be 20 years old, just out of high school into college. The median age, the age right in the middle of our cloud infrastructure degree, is 33 years old. So we really are preparing people for their next jobs. Another thing with our business analytics program is over half of the students in the program already have a bachelor's degree. So again, we're preparing students for additional careers. So these mid-career transitions, this resounds definitely. Continuing to learn more communication, project management, and team building. That's huge. We hear that a lot about the requirements for having students being able to work in teams, developing a literacy in methodologies, whether it's you're doing agile methodologies, various techniques within that. We don't necessarily prepare our students to be Scrum Masters, right out of our programs, but they are conversant, and they understand how to work among agile methodologies. So that's important. So more adaptability, continuing to learn. Again, so Wake Tech is preparing students for their first jobs and their next jobs. I'll go ahead and go on forward in the presentation, but this is really useful feedback, and we'll take this back too to strengthen our programs even more. We've got the Wake Tech Fit, and these are all of the different things that we do in Wake Tech and in non-credit in our computer programs, both credit and non-credit. From entry-level career preparation, preparing for certifications is a really big focus of ours. Upskilling development, we can do custom training, and then on the degree side, we have certificates and degree programs. So sometimes some people may want to develop some skills. Maybe you want to learn Python better than you already do. You're working in networking, you want to learn Python a little bit better. You would take a class. If you are working as in tech support and you want to learn more about cloud, then I would recommend you take a look at one of our cloud infrastructure certificates that kind of give you that training in 4 or 5 different 4-credit courses that really gives you the theory behind things as well as the skill development. And in the next slides, I'll kind of show you what some of these look like. Entry-level skill development, so kind of these hoops that you see here are entry points. So we have people that start off that are interested in careers in IT, but they are very foundational level. They're learning the basics of Windows and then IT Fundamentals Plus. Wherever you see these kind of compass points here are certifications that we offer. So you can kind of go through, learn foundational skills, and then entry-level career skills. We offer training in Net Plus, Sec Plus, A Plus, and CCNA. And oftentimes for people, that can lead to their first job. If you have your CCNA networking and security skills and know the basics of hardware, you're prepared and you're ready to enter into a tech support role. And that's a lot of times where we see people kind of start off. So this would be in our non-degree side. You can kind of come along and take these trainings and be ready for your first job. On the degree side, most of our degrees are 2 years study. You start out again with a hoop. You're new. You learn basic networking, security, and programming. All students do that. And One course I really am a fan of in our programs is kind of an IT solutions. You think of IT in terms of solving problems, not just IT for the sake of technology. Certifications, advanced coursework, and then your degree and your first job. If you already come in with some certifications, we're able to take those certifications, lump them in the early parts, and shorten the time to your degree. So if you have a series of certifications and maybe another degree somewhere, or some other college work, then you can complete our degrees in 2 to 3 semesters by coming in with some of those certifications. So we have ways of kind of shortening that down and fast tracking toward a degree if you have experience and certifications. Now, what do you do for your next job? Demonstrating IT experience is really important. Oh, PowerPoint decided it didn't like that anymore, and it's going to stop. So let me bring that back and start again. We're not going to go to the beginning. We don't need to see Donkey Kong again. There we go. So what they're thinking about here is, again, the example of this is many veterans come to us and they have experience, but they don't have certifications. In the military, you may learn the networking skills that align toward a CCNA or higher, but you don't actually take the certification exams because you don't need them for advancement in the military. When you come out and want to transition into the workforce, we have opportunities to kind of do some exam prep or certification courses to pass those exams. And then we have a lot of opportunities, whether on the top line or non-degree courses or bottom line kind of advanced degree courses that lead, again, toward your next job. So we're looking for people looking for their first jobs as well as training for their next jobs in many areas. And another thing is, I heard a company tell me yesterday that they're actually, because of COVID, they're focusing more on incumbent employee training and upskilling from within rather than recruiting outside. And so if that's a strategy of yours, we can customize many of these options to either offer what we have to a group of employees within your company, and sometimes there's even state funds available for that, or we can customize even something very specific for you. Some people have asked recently for courses in virtualization, Docker, Kubernetes. So we're able to kind of create some custom courses if it's not part of what we normally offer. So that's kind of the different ways that the pathways work. I wanted to give some updates about our programs. The first one is we were recently named a Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense. That's a certification that took us 2 years to get, and we are one of 12 colleges and universities in the state that has that designation. And I believe there are only 6 community colleges in the state that have that designation. And that means that our cybersecurity program is matched up against national standards from NIST. And we'll be doing some outreach as well in cybersecurity. So that we're really excited that finally came through, and now it basically shows the strength of our program and our offerings, and that we're going to be doing some outreach. So cybersecurity, we definitely know the need and the gaps out there in the career field. So we're poised well to prepare for that. We just really strengthened up our non-credit CCNA course. So if you're interested in that networking certification, we will start that course soon. We made it so it's not just simulations. We've actually created virtual environments on the equipment, and you'll be able to log in from home or come onto campus for that non-credit course and do the labs for that. So we've really strengthened that, even to the point that you could take that class and finish in about 3 or 4 months, and it would actually count toward 9 credits on the degree side if you wanted to continue forward to an associate's degree in networking. So that's a brand new course we'll have available soon. Enrollment and diversity, I wanted to show some information about the degree programs. So this shows you the enrollment we have in our degree programs and our certificates and diplomas. So we're up near 4,000 students in our degrees. And the demographics of our students really match the demographics of Wake County. And I know a lot of companies are really focused on increasing the diversity within their hires. So if we take a look at these numbers, we can see that we do have strong percentages of students representing underrepresented populations, students of color and female students in our programs. And we also have supports for a diverse population. We also added veteran status. NCT is kind of our hardware degree, so that includes tech support, networking, and cloud. And 10% of our students in our programs are veterans in those programs too. So a little bit about our diversity and enrollment in our degree programs. Scott mentioned our new articulation agreements. And again, we want to recognize those partnerships to help our students move on from us. And these options are virtual options as well. They're online. So students would continue to be able to take their coursework while they're working for any companies that they're employed by. But a couple more things. We got a grant from National Science Foundation for motion capture and photogrammetry for our simulation and game development program. So we've just built this lab and we're able to do motion capture. Many people know the IT degrees that we have, but simulation and game development, we have, I'll say, and I know Scott says too, one of the best programs in the nation, if not the best program in the nation for simulation and game development. So we definitely have opportunities with motion capture and photogrammetry now in that SGD program. And I just wanted to splash up for technophiles in the audience, this is some information we have about the equipment update for RT1. So these are some equipment that we're purchasing again. So especially virtually now, here at the RTP campus, last spring we had 1,600 students on campus. This semester we have 140 because of COVID, but our enrollment has exploded online, and our enrollment in our IT programs is continuing to grow, and all of our courses are available online. And it's because of the strength of this equipment and our instructors that we're able to provide virtual learning opportunities that are just as rigorous as the ones on site. So some information about the equipment that we have. And Scott, we've got a couple more minutes left in our time. We talked a little bit about RT2 in the presentation, a little bit about what we're planning, and then what's going on for Eastern Wake.
Sure, thanks, Keith. Just a couple of things happening at Wake Tech. One, again, at our Research Triangle campus there in Morrisville, is a biotech edition that will open probably next October. Will be the day we walk in and do a ribbon cutting. There is the schedule. It'll be a unique facility for us, a couple of features to it. One of the things, just for you to know too, at Wake Tech, we're putting a major emphasis on apprenticeship. The county is providing great support where we can provide free education and training for individuals enrolled in either pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship programs with companies. And so Wake Works and the technology connections around hiring will be located there on the first floor. The second floor will be a partnership with Wake County Public Schools around, particularly with an IT and biotech emphasis. We have 3 early college high school partnerships with Wake County Public Schools. This would eventually, we anticipate, become the 4th early college high school where students could start in the 9th grade in an IT biotech focused curriculum and move forward. And then the third floor will be a biotech center for us. We have programs right now in terms of biopharma technology for the pharmaceutical industry. We sponsor or administer the Capstone Center, which is a statewide biotech training program for community colleges that's co-located at NC State at the BTech on the Centennial campus. This will be a site for a new degree for us, which will be biotechnology. It'll be more the lab-focused production of biotech. It will move us into areas such as gene therapy lab-related work that can provide us opportunities for bioag in those areas. So we're excited about what that will bring. And I think one of the things too that could be unique in that regard, when we talk about the transfer partnerships and with the high school, this could be one of the few places in the world where a student could come, start in 9th grade, finish their associate's degree before they get out of high school, and with, for instance, the accelerated master's that takes place with Northeastern, could within 4 years complete a master's degree and do a 1-year co-op at the same time, all in one place. They wouldn't be going to football games, they wouldn't be doing a lot of things like that on this campus, but they could work and have a very unique skill set in that regard that you probably couldn't do any other place from a 9th through actually finishing through our partners model. And then the big thing down the road, 2 weeks ago, we purchased 106 acres right off of I-87 in Wendell for what would be the 7th campus of Wake Tech. And this one will have a particularly unique theme too. You see our campus has become somewhat themed. The RTP Campus is themed around more IT and biotech. This we're calling 4.0 as we move into the industry 4.0 world that so many of you know well, and that's why we've looked to those partnerships with RIoT. Phase 1 is funded through our bond funding, the generous bond funding that Wake County has provided, which is essentially the top part of what you see here of what this will eventually look like. It will include there to the left a unique, what we're calling public safety 4.0 facility, which will be, it's really a simulation center, a little city within a building for law enforcement tied to a driving range, but also what will be a big focus for us around unmanned aircraft in a partnership with Elizabeth City State University, who we have discussed with about co-locating into that facility. You see beside what's called a UAS pavilion, and Elizabeth City State is the aviation university within the university system and has a 4-year degree in terms of aviation, but also unmanned aircraft. And so we would kind of provide those types of feeder opportunities from our training and 2-year degrees, laddering, if you will, into a 4-year opportunity. And then the facility to the top right is what we call our Tech 4.0. That'll be very much focused around electronics and automation, programs like mechatronics and robotics. Also, our biopharma technology program will move out there. You can see in the distance some cell towers, greenhouses. Greenhouses will support a bioag-related effort that ties in with RTP. And then the cell tower, we have our apprenticeship work. We have a national partnership with the National Association of Tower Erectors in terms of 5G cell towers. And so 5G and the installation that comes in with that will be a big piece of both that facility and how we play out. So we're excited about that effort. We think it'll move us in that direction. We look forward to getting advice from NC RIoT and all our partners out there, and working very closely with employer partners and our university partners. I have to do a big shout out to our great partners at NC State, what they're doing in the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, what we partner with VTech, how they partner in the other work. And so they have been great collaborators for us, and we'll continue to have that strong connection with our NC State partners. So exciting things to come, we believe.
Very exciting. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you so much, Keith. While we're passing it over to Paul with Aero Electronics, we do have a question here, Keith. We regularly have companies coming to RIoT looking for software developer and IT talent, as well as other areas that overlap your programs. What is the best way for them to connect with students or make their opportunities known to students?
Yeah, great question. So I would go ahead and get in touch with me, and I can filter everything down throughout our program. We have a new dean over our degree programs. So anyone that's interested, as we are passing along, I will put our link into the chat. It's it.waketech.edu. And you can click on that link and get some more information about our programs, but everyone can also reach out to me, and I will definitely get in touch and connect you where we can throughout our organization.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Keith. Thank you again, Scott. Just really cool stuff. As a Wake Tech and NC State alum, it's awesome to see what you guys are doing.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Glad to kick off Developer Month and see everyone online.
Thanks, Keith. All right. Next up, we have Paul Peterson with Aero Electronics. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Can you see my screen?
We can. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, fantastic. Scott and Keith, I want to thank you. That's it amazes me just to kind of see the opportunities that we have. And, I remember when I came to Raleigh, and I think it was 1982, and, how it just amazes me to see how much Wake has grown. And it's really exciting, the things that you guys are doing. So thank you for your contribution to the community.
Great, thank you.
All right, today we want to go over essentially what we're saying are new hardware technologies that are enabling the next wave of IoT. It's interesting to me, I think, and Caroline, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Aero's been participating in RIoT for about 5 years now. And
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me to see, how much progress and how much technology that has kind of advanced and things like that, and how IoT has, I use the term, it's kind of entering a mature phase. We've kind of gone from, the toddler phase, through the adolescent phase, and now we're kind of getting into that young adulthood. And what we're finding out are things that, of what has worked and things, honestly, that hasn't worked. So we want to take a moment today, just kind of go over a little bit of the things and how that's kind of guiding the trends, if you will, within IoT. So just a quick background for those of you who aren't familiar with Arrow Electronics. Very large company, most people have never heard of. We're about a $29 billion company, founded actually in 1935. And we have roughly 20,000 employees worldwide, and we service about 175,000 customers. We are in the industry what we call a electronic component distributor. And essentially what we do helps fuel the global supply chain of electronic components into the industry. As I like to say, any type of electronic component, when people ask, what do I do? I say, take a look at the little green printed circuit boards, all of those components on there. Arrow can typically provide 90 to 100% of all electronic components that, are placed on a printed circuit board. And we also supply components, things like power supplies and things like that outside of that environment. So that's who we are. We represent, at this point, probably well over 1,000, maybe actually, 1,500 or so different suppliers that we distribute products for. Now, I put in this presentation, which I'll make available to everyone, we did kind of a review of IoT communication protocols, and for time's sake, I'll put that in the appendix of the presentation. But what we wanted to kind of go over is the foundation, and you can look through that material to understand the foundation of what this next generation of communication protocols are founded upon. I know looking through the group there, we've got some people that are quite, the experts in IoT, and others that may be new. So this next section, for the experts, bear with me here. We're going to go through, and I'll just kind of, show, in essence, when we say the Internet of Things, what we actually are talking about. Essentially, a thing contains one or more sensors. It's something that's in the environment. It's something that's, for example, today we're going to be hearing from other providers about, audio or other sensors. So it's something that's in the environment, either listening or measuring or things of that sort. And that's basically that raw data is going into a central microprocessor, sometimes called a microcontroller, that gathers this sensor data. But also what's interesting about it is it implements some form of wireless protocol. When we say IoT, we almost by definition imply that a product is wireless. And that's important. And to really today, what we're going to be talking about are really wireless protocols. So there is a wireless radio, and that wireless radio primarily exchanges data. And there's some form of a power source. That power source may be something small, like a coin cell, something, if you see in the video, something like a standard watch battery type coin cell, or it could be something that's plugged into the wall, like a standard, as we call them, wall warts and things like that. But the thing, and I want to make a distinction here, because not all things implement what we call the Internet Protocol. Internet Protocol is a well-established, been around literally for decades, and that allows us to communicate, the language, if you will, of the Internet. So, for example, and I use, here's one well-known example, that seems to be quite a success story. Actually, an early partner with Arrow Electronics, to be honest. Your video doorbell that senses, it has a camera on it, can take an image, can actually send video, but it actually implements Wi-Fi, which is an IP protocol going to our home access point and goes to the Internet. So the Internet, in this case, begins at the thing. It actually speaks IP. A lot of what we see in IoT, though, these days, the newer, some of the newer protocols don't necessarily implement IP protocol, they implement other forms of wireless. Wi-Fi as by itself actually is good. It's probably one of the most widely used IoT protocols. But, and one of the reasons is it does speak IP, but there's other things, including things like Bluetooth and LoRa, which we're going to spend quite a bit more time today talking about, that they itself does not necessarily speak internet protocol. They exchange data. So then we have a concept of a gateway. It's not an access point necessarily, but that gateway is our on-ramp where the internet protocol begins at the gateway. So we go from sensor, all of this raw data coming in from the sensors that are then transmitted wirelessly in a non-IP protocol that goes to the gateway, and that gateway in some form or fashion is tied to the internet. It could either be wired, like with a standard Ethernet cable, or it too can also interface to an access point using IP protocol. Or it, in many of the gateways that we get involved with today, we also have cellular options. And that's going to be the other part that we're going to be spending time today talking about is cellular implementations. Likewise, what's interesting is there's other protocols, for example, Bluetooth Low Energy or BLE, that is itself a non-IP based protocol, but our handset, our smartphone becomes essentially the equivalent of the gateway. And it too can be tied in via cellular, or, if you're like me and you have to kind of get on your kids every now and then, it says, hop off, hop off cellular. You're using way too much data. Jump over to, to Wi-Fi. So all of these things in this example, the smartphone does act essentially as a gateway. So protocols, what does that mean? Essentially, protocols is the language. It allows us to interoperate many different systems and allow them to work together. Bluetooth, for example, is a protocol, and it's an industry agreed upon set of parameters that allows us to exchange data. What's interesting about it is it stops devices from interfering. It adds levels of security, and we're going to talk a little bit more about security here as well, because that's kind of getting to be the next piece that has people concerned is how secure is my device? Can my device be hacked? Can it be taken over with with ill intent or else? So the communication protocols also have agreed upon roadmaps for future upgrades. You will hear things like IEEE, which is a standards body that set different parameters and things like that. So there's literally hundreds of different protocols out there. Here are some of the predominant ones that we see for IoT, or the Internet of Things. We're going to spend some time talking about LoRa, Bluetooth Smart, actually some of the changes in Wi-Fi. We're not going to be spending a huge amount of time on Wi-Fi, the current implementations, because they're pretty widely understood. But also things like 6LoWPAN, Zigbee, other type protocols that are out there as well. And not one standard is necessarily better than the other. They simply meet different needs. And as we encourage people, particularly if people that are going through new entrepreneur ideas, this is critical to select the right communication technology for your particular product. The best technology is the one that works best for you. Implementing wireless technology takes considerable RF expertise. It is something that we never want to diminish. We can assist you by using things like modules, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in 1 second. So these protocols can vary by range. Certain things like near field communication, I don't know if you can still see my video, but the ability to mate essentially a smartphone up to a near device, and going essentially around, say, less than an inch, maybe 10 centimeters, and exchanging data. NFC is widely used in many instances because cell phones have pretty much adopted it as a standard. Beyond that, we go into what's called the personal area network protocols. And many of those, we can go from roughly 10 meters, roughly 30 feet, to around 300 feet. So things like Bluetooth Low Energy, 6LoWPAN, Zigbee, these are all different protocols that are there. And I might could actually say Wi-Fi was is in that range as well, although there are going to be some variations of Wi-Fi that takes us up beyond that, and you'll hear about those today. And then we get into much longer range things, for example, like cellular protocols. It can get us upwards of, 5, 10 kilometers in some cases. And we'll spend a little more time talking about those as well. All right. So, I highlighted that the options that are available are numerous for implementing IoT. We can start at what we call the chipset level. These are the actual silicon ICs that are used. And it basically allows you to do a full custom level design. And, some protocols, we encourage people to design at the chipset level. For example, some proprietary protocols, obviously, that we propose people design at the chipset. And actually, Bluetooth Low Energy, it's not necessarily overtly difficult to design at the chipset level. What's interesting about it, though, is certain protocols, as they get more complicated, for example, Wi-Fi, and certainly at cellular level, IoT implementations, we almost never recommend that you use chipsets, excuse me, at those levels, because with Wi-Fi, it takes considerable, approaching probably 7-figure type development just to get Wi-Fi working at the chip level. And then with cellular, you're actually probably approaching, to do a chip level design, you're approaching maybe 10 million, you're in that 8-figure level at the chipset level. And, quite honestly, for most people in our world, we recommend in those cases for Wi-Fi, things like modules. Modules are interesting. They're pre-certified wireless modules or non-certified, but pre-certified means that they already carry things like FCC certifications. They simplify design complexity and save time. And actually what's interesting is modules, while historically they used to carry more of a premium, modules today are carrying much less of a premium over their chip level levels, and they allow customers to get to market much quickly with not a lot of additional costs over the chipset, and certainly with a lot less development cost. We go on to what's called the board or box level, and in these cases, these are off the shelf. They could be a system on module. They could be some form of a gateway. We also, I would lump things like cellular modems in this case, which we'll talk a little bit more. But a cellular modem is something that already carries most of the certifications, and very much is you can implement it on your printed circuit board and get to market very quickly. Finally, also, I have to add in that Arrow can also provide accessories, things like antennas, amplifiers, batteries, all the other things that are there. We are, at the end of the day, we can provide pretty much 100% of anything you need around the IoT space of it, including design services. Most customers that we see that are successful in IoT do reach out for third-party entities for things like design certification, FCC approvals, CE approvals, software development, and things of that sort. So we can play matchmaker, and happy to do that for most of our customers for these third-party services. So what's new? Again, in the appendix, which we'll make available, we'll kind of go over some of the basics or the platform fundamentals that this was based upon. But I wanted to go over what's kind of interesting on this end, because we see, for example, Bluetooth, and across the Carolinas, the territory that we cover, many of our customers are successfully implementing Bluetooth. Bluetooth has about, let's say 2.5 to 3 years ago, came out with a very new standard called Bluetooth 5.0. And what's interesting is it's become a platform that we have built upon 2 new standards. Let's say about a year ago, we saw it implemented was Bluetooth 5.1. And now just recently, Bluetooth 5.2 have been ratified. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the pieces that allow us to implement that. Okay, Bluetooth. Most people today, when we say Bluetooth, I would say the majority of the population is familiar when we talk about things like Bluetooth headsets or Bluetooth accessories. But really, Bluetooth as a term incorporates really two different RF standards. There's what's called Bluetooth, sometimes called classic or enhanced data rate. And things like Bluetooth speakers actually still use that type of protocol. But certain things like wearables, some of the new health products and things like that, your wristwatches and things of that sort, are more and more implementing Bluetooth Low Energy. Why? Well, one of the reasons is that Bluetooth Low Energy allows us to run on a very small power source like a coin cell. They can have quite good range. We mentioned maybe 30 meters, but in some cases with the newer protocols at 5.0 allows us to go up exceeding 100 meters in an open air environment. Relatively low power, we can run them on a coin cell. And it has very little low latency that allows us to connect. So with that, we're seeing literally billions of new connections done with Bluetooth. And the other thing, honestly, one of the reasons that's made Bluetooth Low Energy widely adopted is our smartphones. Smartphones, as kind of organizations, be it an Android or iOS, adopted the ability to interface seamlessly with Bluetooth Low Energy. Obviously, they also have Bluetooth because we can all stream audio from our phones, but allows us to go through and implement things on our smartphone. So that scenario we're showing where our smartphone is our gateway, that is kind of a scenario there. We can take a Bluetooth device, transmit, again, it does not speak IP itself, but we use our smartphone to take that data, turn it into IP data that we can then send to the cloud via either cellular or Wi-Fi. Okay. So the 5.0 summary, what's new in it? We increased the speed by 2x. We have the capability of what's called a 2 mega character PHY, if you will. We'll talk about that in 1 second. Increasing the bandwidth up to 1.4 megabits per second, and also reducing power in the process. And we increased the range. One of the problems with Bluetooth, and if you've ever paired a Bluetooth speaker and walked, say, more than 40 or 50 feet away from it, and you start getting connection, Bluetooth Low Energy, we were able to enhance the range, in some cases up to 4x. We also, what's interesting is we've increased the data capacity in what they call the advertisement payload. And this is actually important for many Bluetooth implementation or many IoT implementations, because this amount of data here, this 255 bytes, allows us to very seamlessly transmit a fair amount of sensor data in simple Bluetooth beacon packets or advertisement packets. And that is actually good enough for many of the applications that we're seeing, where data rates, we don't need essentially the 1.4 megabits per second. We just want to have periodic transfers of data. So it actually is kind of interesting that was added in Bluetooth 5.0. So again, we increased it, the faster data rate with this 2 meg PHY increases because of error correction that's involved to about 1.4 megabits per second. We've reduced the power, particularly when we, due to shorter range and things of that sort, that we can get with this high-speed PHY. Long range PHY, again, we're not able to do, a 1.4 megabits per second, but we are able to go up to about 112 kilobits per second and get meaningful range out of this, roughly in some cases up to say 150 to 200 meters. And that's actually for many implementations good. That can cover, for example, Bluetooth long range can cover, for example, whole buildings, big box retail stores, things of that sort. So it gets over some of the hurdles that we had with the original Bluetooth specification. So 5.0 added these features, and with that, there's a couple of things that were quite interesting. 5.1 primarily added the ability to do direction finding. Bluetooth itself, while we had certain things like proximity mode and things of that sort, Bluetooth itself was not necessarily good for finding our keys. You may have seen things like you can put on for example, your keychain, take your phone, press a button. It wouldn't tell you where your keys are. It might actually just actuate an audio interface on there. 5.1 gives us the ability to determine which angle the radio signals are coming from. It's kind of a cool feature that's been added there. What just has been released is the ability now to add what's called an isochronous channel. And isochronous is a term that's been around for a while. We use it in USB, but it essentially means real-time data. It's one of those things, for example, streaming audio is considered isochronous data. If you happen to miss a bit, not a big deal. You probably won't even notice it in the audio stream that you had a corrupted packet. So isochronous takes away some of the error checking, but allows us to stream at a higher data rate. And that's been added in Bluetooth 5.2. Virtually all Bluetooth speakers that we see out there do not use, at least the ones on the market today, do not use Bluetooth low energy. 5.2 is going to change that. And in doing so is actually going to reduce the power consumption, increase the range, and some things like that. So that's kind of an exciting development. The issue actually though comes down to is 5.2 hasn't been implemented on the smartphones yet. So we kind of had the chicken or the egg of what is going to be implemented, first. Once it gets implemented, it has been ratified as a spec. So we'll expect to see that come in the smartphone devices in the next year or so. Another thing that Bluetooth 5.2 added was this thing called LE power control. And LE power control allows you to dynamically change the transmit power. Previously in Bluetooth low energy, we would essentially, it's like we would crank the amplifiers up till we got a good connection and we would never adjust them once we were connected. This allows us to actually reduce reduce the power when we have good range and things like that. We can actually reduce the power that the transmitter is putting out into the atmosphere, if you will, and still maintain good connection. One of the real issues that we have, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, many of these protocols use what's called 2.4 gigahertz technology. And 2.4 gigahertz is an open band, what we call an ISM band. It's extremely crowded these days. You walk in any home, in any office with a spectrum analyzer, and 2.4 gigahertz is a very noisy RF frequency. So, things like that can help reduce noise, like LE power control, is very much appreciated. A lot of new devices that are coming out. We see, for example, some of our suppliers, for example, Sci Labs has silicon that is now implementing Bluetooth 5.1. I won't go through all the details. Like I said, I'll provide this more as a reference. And they have just announced their Bluetooth 5.2 capable device. And these are just coming into the market now as we speak. And we can certainly help you if Bluetooth is your protocol of choice. We can help you, implement and get information on things like that. There will be things like evaluation boards. This happens to be an evaluation board that shows the chip level design. Quite a few sensors. I think there's roughly 9 sensors on here: humidity sensor, ambient light, UV, Hall effect, digital MEMS microphones. Keeping in mind that now with Bluetooth 5.2, we have the capability of transmitting audio. So we have the capability of doing full, audio interfacing with Bluetooth 5.2. And again, what's interesting is for many of our suppliers, they will give you examples. This shows free iPhone and Android app software that you can leverage in your own design. And it's a very low price point of entry to use one of these modules to kind of get you started in Bluetooth 5, 5.1, or 5.2. Also, remember I mentioned that we talked about the chip level, but there's also module levels. And again, not to go into too many details, but for example, the BGM 220, this guy and this smaller guy has just been announced, literally just a few weeks ago. And these are module level that already carry carrier certifications. So if you were to design at the chip level, you could expect to pay, let's say, roughly $8,000 to $10,000 to achieve just one of these certifications. At the module level, you can buy a module that's already pre-certified. And you pay just a slight premium for that. And there is at some point a break-even point where it does make sense to pay to have certifications done at a chip level. But for many applications, I would say even up to maybe 10 to 20,000 pieces, I would suggest that customers start with a module. We have other suppliers, and again, this is not going to be an exhaustive overview because there's simply so many suppliers. But I do want to talk about those suppliers that are new to market with either 5.1 or 5.2. So Nordic Semiconductor, they're also a supporter of RIoT here in the Carolinas. They've had an offering for, I would say, probably 2 to 3 years now of the NRF, what we call 52 series. And they have released their NRF 53 series, which supports Bluetooth 5.2. What's unique about Nordic is they also support many other protocols as well. Not only do they support Bluetooth 5, they also have some of these other protocols like 802.15.4, which is an IEEE standard. But one of the overriding things, be it Nordic, Silicon Labs, or things of that sort, these next generation parts are dramatically reducing the power needed for Bluetooth connection. So you can see we're dropping literally, 40% of the transmit active current and roughly in half the receive active current. And we see a similar thing in Scilabs and the other suppliers as well for that. Now, I also want to comment that we've got many other suppliers in here, and feel free to go to arrow.com or take a look through the presentation, as we'll have a whole spreadsheet of different suppliers of these products. One thing that's interesting, Nordic, and as we said, in the silicon world, in the semiconductor world, be it with Nordic or Scilabs or NXP, ST, any others, they provide much of the software needed to implement. Remember, it's a protocol, it's an industry accepted protocol. You do not want to try to write your own Bluetooth protocol stack. It would literally take you multiple man years. And then by that time, you probably wouldn't even have something that had all the features that you can just use pretty much automatically for free. Okay. Also want to mention there are modules, and one of the things that's interesting is you will see, for example, modules that are combination both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So for example, I wanted to highlight this one because it's a relatively new module that puts Bluetooth, in this case 5.1, as well as Wi-Fi in a single chip solution. Now, these typically will require an external microprocessor of some sort, maybe even something that's running Linux. But I don't, it wouldn't do it justice to not highlight that there's a lot of silicon solutions out there that implement multiple protocols, in this case, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, in a single mod. This happens to be a module that carries FCC certifications and things of that sort. So again, we literally have hundreds of different options. And as you get to that point, please reach out to us to help kind of make decisions. So Bluetooth low energy solution providers, you can see the chipset, the module vendors, and also the services that are available. Keeping in mind that Bluetooth low energy at the chipset level, may be feasible, but again, I would say unless you're over 10 to 20,000 units, you may be better served to look at a module. Okay. All right, Wi-Fi. I didn't intentionally go over some of the older protocols of Wi-Fi, but I did want to talk just a moment about some of the new and exciting things that are happening on the Wi-Fi front, and things that I think, a year or two out, we're going to see kind of make sense. Wi-Fi, kind of by definition, has been 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and these are open ISM bands. But one of the things that's kind of been added is this new amendment to the Wi-Fi spec called 802.11ah called Halo. And in essence, it something that takes advantage of the other ISM band spaces, primarily things in the what we call the sub gigahertz space. So for example, we get a much better link budget, and although 10 dB does not, maybe not sound like a huge amount, that's about a 3 X the link budget over typical Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, as you may have experience, is not very good at getting through things like drywall or through steel buildings or things of that sort. This will have much better penetration. It'll also allow us to go much further in IoT implementations than we had with traditional 802.11 Wi-Fi. Just a quick comparison, you can see, again, I will state that this is more targeting IoT, whereas things like 802.11ac gets us upwards of, literally nearly 7 gigabits per second now. This is not targeting that level. It has really good data rate. Remember Bluetooth, we were at 1.2 megabits or 1.4 megabits. And here we're looking at roughly 150 kilobits. So significantly more bandwidth, good range, relatively low power. This compares other areas as well, where Bluetooth, LoRaWAN, and things like that. It's an adaptable technology, meaning it too changes its radio modulation and its throughput based upon range. Similar, although not exactly what we saw in Bluetooth 5.2. And we're just beginning, this is a brand new module that's just come out, that's coming out to implement this. So AH is interesting. Your home router at this point probably does not implement it. I can almost guarantee it doesn't implement it at this point, but it does offer an interesting approach to doing Wi-Fi, or a new approach, particularly for IoT, and does open up new options for that. Because it is 802.11, it does speak IP, as we had talked about earlier. So the actual IP Internet Protocol does originate, right here at the beginning point of the module. So I did put, this is similar. I also wanted to note, and we, at this point, haven't seen much silicon, but there's also another standard called 802.11af, and that actually uses other frequency. It's called the white space Wi-Fi, because this is frequency bandwidth that was opened up when the TV transmitters all agreed to stop transmitting the old TV signals. So we have quite a bit of spectrum here that is available, and we're beginning to see technologies, for example, Wi-Fi, take into using that spectrum that has been opened up by the FCC. Okay. Cellular, and just kind of doing a quick time check here, because I want to spend a fair amount of time talking about cellular, and then with LoRa, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Okay, with cellular, so much buzz these days is around 5G. 1G, if you're like me and solidly in middle age, you remember the old bag phones that were all analog and literally could run a die-hard battery to the ground in a matter of 30 minutes or so. We've come a long way, and we talk now about 5G offering tremendous gigabit bandwidths, high latency, interconnected cities, and things like that. So 5G, rightly so, is quite interesting, and many of our handsets are coming, saying they're 5G ready, or 5G has been implemented. But what's interesting is 5G does not run well on a good old coin cell. In fact, no cellular runs well on a good coin cell, even 4G. So it's not necessarily something we want to put a 5G transceiver with our humidity sensor in our thermostat. Well, that's great. It's not necessarily something we want to have that level of connectivity, at least not yet. So what's happening is we kind of see a different branch, or a different tactic, if you will, by the major carriers, the ones that are putting in the infrastructure, the cell towers, for IoT. And it's kind of interesting is that, at first, and I would say about 5 years ago, we would legitimately ask the question, does Verizon, does AT&T, does Vodafone care about IoT? Well, the short answer is absolutely. As we see handsets, that market is kind of getting saturated. We don't expect to see the double-digit growth that we had seen in the handsets. And, while people will upgrade to 5G standards, and the cell guys will expand, we will still see double-digit growth in IoT. So the carriers are responding. So, you know, we see all these different standards. I'm going to highlight two today. LTE Cat 1 is something that literally is something that is implemented in handsets. We can go up to Cat 20 and things of that sort, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But you can see, you know, pretty high bandwidth and things like that. There's also, with the release 12 of, you know, the cellular spec, we saw Cat 0, simplified for example, the antenna chains and things like that. We went from 2 antennas to 1, and we do have Cat 0 implementations, but I want to focus really on two that have been out for, let's say, maybe 2 years now, and we're beginning to see the cell providers make silicon available, or the silicon providers make the chipsets available to implement LTE Cat M and NB-IoT, and in this case we call NB-IoT 1, which is part of the NB-IoT spec. And what's interesting is these are targeting the lower IoT bandwidth. And, you know, they actually, in LTE Cat 1, we can see download speeds of up to about 1 megabits per second. It can either be full or half duplex. 1 antenna, simpler to implement. And NB-IoT is actually very interesting as well. And this is now getting much wider coverage as we go through, for example, in the US and things of that sort. So these are the two standards, M and NB-IoT. Now, even NB-IoT is even significantly less. You know, here we're talking about 26 kilobits per second download. This puts it in the range of things like LoRa and things of that sort. But if we're dealing with small amounts of data, this is going to be a much lower cost. And we hear terms of like, you know, sub $10 modules and things like that for NB-IoT, and even Cat M to a degree. There's other standards as well. There's this GSM IoT that came out. Primarily though, what we're seeing is Cat M and NB-IoT as those emerging standards that really are generating excitement in the IoT environment. So again, a little side-by-side comparison. I'll put this in there. One thing I did want to say is, for example, Cat M, you can have full mobility. You may hear things like cold chain storage. In other words, you want to track the temperature of a refrigerated semi-truck as it goes across country. In those cases, that's going to be more of a Cat M1 implementation because it does allow cell tower to cell tower handoff. NB1 typically stays close to the location that it pairs with. So things like a home thermostat, your water heater, your refrigerator, or whatever, might be something that you could implement with NB because they're not going to be going anywhere. So NB is more of a stationary, at least yet. NB2 actually has some stipulations that it does allow handoff. Here's an interesting dynamic. Not every country is implementing it the same way. So the countries in purple have decided their carriers, AT&T, Verizon, for example, in the US, they're going to implement both Cat M and NB-IoT, whereas, for example, not all of Europe has said they're going to implement LTE M. Canada, I think Canada actually has agreed to do NB-IoT at this point, so this is a little dated. But we see other areas in Asia and other parts of Europe that are going to be IoT, and then others that are going to be strictly LTE Cat M. So things of that sort. So, you know, this comes into play when you're making a choice for cellular from a global perspective. Again, cellular chipsets, we almost universally don't recommend unless you're 1 million pieces plus. And again, most of these guys don't even engage at the, you have to be someone like the name of a fruit company or a major cell provider to implement the cellular chipset. Cellular modules, we absolutely endorse, but keeping in mind, modulars don't carry the necessary certifications. They still have to be carrier certified. And then we talk about modems. And what's interesting, modems themselves kind of look like modules, and they can be, in many of these modems, we can actually solder them down to our own printed circuit board, but they carry all certifications. They're ready to go. Most of them, like for example, you can see here, have SIM cards on them and things like that. So the difference, modules still require ideal volume. We say 50,000 to 300,000 at the module level. You might can get by with around 10,000. Pretty high engineering cost, but they do have lower costs than the actual modems. And these modems with NB-IoT, I can dare say, are coming down into that sub $30 range at this point with the newer IoT standards. The module, with the modem, those certifications are required. You literally can drop it on the box and the carriers will recognize it when they power up. Modules, you're looking at tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of certification. Again, if you're at, 10,000 pieces, that begins to make sense. $100,000 in certification adds about a $10 premium. That's about what you would pay for the difference between a modem and a module, and you can get some flexibility with the module. I'm not going to go through all, for time's sake here, because I do want to get touch base with LoRa, but we have, for example, Quectel, and you can see that Quectel has modules up to, to the high data rate, Cat 20 in this case, but they also have a division that's, or a group of modules that are focusing in on Cat M1 and NB-IoT, okay? And these can be implemented, pretty much at the module level. Telit also is a provider that we have, and they too are doing Cat M1, NB-IoT, different modules, as well as things like Cat 1, and even higher speed like Cat 4 for data type applications that require much higher bandwidth. Nordic Semiconductor, again, we heard about them in Bluetooth. They also have dedicated modules that can do LTE Cat M and NB-IoT. They also make available, a great little development kit here that allows you to kind of pull your design and bring it in. It does have a SIM card, and there's the module, kind of give you a relative size of it. That's, it's a fairly small module, and we're beginning to see these modules show up not only at the module, but also in the modem level. Several of our suppliers have implemented modems. We see other carriers, Murata, more commonly known for capacitors. They're also a big player in the module space, and they too are coming out with cellular, in this case, Cat M1 and NB-IoT based modules. So again, a large number, and again, modems based off of those chipsets. For example, Multitech. They make modules that can be put in place on printed circuit boards, but they can also make full units that are encased, ready to go. And we're seeing a lot of these used in gateway applications where we need, remote access. Think maybe an oil field or things of that sort, where we need something that's ruggedized, maybe even weatherproof that we can put in out there. Also, another one of our suppliers, and again, I know I'm going quickly through these. For example, NimbleLink is a supplier of both the modem that can be done at a, solder to the printed circuit board level, as well as standalone modems that can be used pretty much that are encased and that are weatherproof. Digi is another one, and Laird is also another provider of those. Okay. Finally, I'm going to jump ahead. We also see gateways based off of that. I recommend that we make the presentation available. You go through this because there's, I wanted to err on the side of having more data than not enough. All right, finally, I wanted to kind of touch base on LoRa. We talked about the trends that are happening in the IoT space. And it's interesting that we're seeing LoRa emerge as what I would say a clear winner in IoT. LoRa has been around for quite some time. It's actually, probably, I think the spec for LoRa is over a decade old. But it's interesting that we're seeing it adopted in many implementations, in some cases over things like Bluetooth and things of that sort for multi-device, wide location type implementations. You can think of, for example, in airports. A good example are things like sports stadiums where we may want to monitor things like lighting that's up on, that's around the edge of the stadium. Certain things like Bluetooth, until long range came out for Bluetooth, LoRa is actually proving to be, quite a good standard to support those type of environments. So not to get into the science behind it, but LoRa uses what's called chirp spread spectrum. It's very low power. It's feasible to run LoRa off of a coin cell or certainly AA batteries. We can get, in some cases, we've actually seen upwards of 15-kilometer of range, and we can get reasonable bandwidth, upwards of say 300 bits per second to about 50 kilobits per second. So we're not sending large amounts of data, but we are able to send it very long range with low power. We also see a standard, a protocol standard, if you will, that has been layered on top of LoRa called LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN allows us to allow different LoRa nodes to interact in a common language. And although LoRa itself is a well-defined standard, LoRaWAN adds that capability, a data exchange format, if you will, that applications can exchange data at the API level more easily than they could with just a LoRa standalone situation. So virtually all LoRa modems can support LoRaWAN. It's just simply another layer of software that's layered on top of it. So LoRaWAN allows interconnectivity between different type of nodes. It's one of the reasons why, I'll use the sports stadium example, the stadium lights can talk LoRaWAN, as well as the soda machines can all communicate via this open LoRa network. And we're actually beginning to see that come into play, where whole campus-wide areas are providing LoRa gateways, implementing LoRaWAN, so different implementers of LoRa can all cooperate, communicate, and coexist in those environments. I'm not going to go through the whole LoRa hardware, but what's interesting about it, and I'll just make the comment that, one of the ways you can tell the standard is becoming more, is succeeding in the marketplace, is just the sheer number of different module providers that are emerging that are providing LoRa. Not only the modules and things of that sort, but also the gateways. So I'll use one example here. This is a brand new module that's come out that puts that microprocessor, if you remember, we talked about the thing piece of it, the LoRa transceiver, and essentially the, all the different pieces in here to implement LoRa. And, we're seeing OEMs gravitate towards this type of implementation because, one, it's very low power. Two, the actual module, which does carry FCC certifications, is quite small, 10 by 8 millimeters. Just kind of imagine the size of that is a small module. So low power, small, long range, and we're seeing the module providers respond to that. In the appendix, I've put all these other suppliers that are in there, so you can take a look through that. Likewise, we mentioned the gateways are emerging. So things like the ability to have LoRa. In this case, we're doing, LoRaWAN to some type of IP, in this case, Wi-Fi or Ethernet itself. So we have that capability, but we also have other people, for example, like Laird, that also is doing LoRa, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and even a new implementation that's doing cellular in the gateway environment. So a huge number. Multitech, a great provider. We're seeing a lot of momentum with their gateways. When people want to put a universal LoRaWAN gateway in their environment, they're able to implement that type of functionality. All right, others, Geneatech. We even see things like USB dongle that allow you to take your laptop and get them into LoRa networks and things of that sort. All right. So LoRa providers, again, actually Semtech is the only provider of the chip level of LoRa. It's kind of interesting, you know, that arrangement. It's their proprietary implementation. And yes, they are open absolutely to having you do a chip level design, but most of the LoRa implementations, and like we're seeing in the module level, pricing is in line with what, you know, from a module provider versus what it would take, you know, price-wise, once you add antenna, matching networks, power, things of that sort at the chip level. The modules, in many cases in LoRa, are about as cost-effective as the chip level. So where's all this heading? As IoT technologies mature, there are certain clear trends that are emerging. We see 5.0 adding a lot of benefits, 5.1 and 5.2, to Bluetooth Low Energy that will help IoT. While there's a lot of, you know, previous generation 4.0, 4.2 level BLE, and all of those implementations, for the most part, support Bluetooth Low Energy. And what's actually kind of interesting is that 5.0 is backwards compatible with 4.2. So we actually have seen suppliers saying they're 5.0 ready, 5.0 ready, when in fact they're just still Bluetooth, say for example 4.2, because it meets all the specs of the kind of the previous grandfathering, if you will, that was in 5.0. But with 5.1 and 5.2, particularly the long range PHY and the higher speed PHY, they have some clear benefits for IoT. Wi-Fi is exciting because we're beginning to see new adaptations outside of that crowded 2.4 gigahertz space. And again, targeting IoT. Wi-Fi has been around a long time, and it's been a great resource for allowing us to, you know, connect our smart TV, our smartphone, our, you know, laptops and things of that sort. And we're seeing it being adopted more for IoT. Cellular carriers, as we talked about, Cat-M and IoT, are offering lower bandwidth options, which are more than adequate for our IoT needs. And we're going to continue to see that emerge as we get into NB2, Cat, you know, M1, you know, 2, if you will, and things like that. And LoRa has emerged as a clear, you know, protocol leader. It's not new, but it has emerged as kind of a protocol of choice because of its flexibility and things like that. Some protocols, unfortunately, by definition, you know, will fall by the wayside. They're not going to be discontinued, but you may not see as much development around them. And I won't go into details of kind of who the winners and losers are, other than obviously LoRa, cellular, and Wi-Fi are kind of the winners on this. But some of the other protocols, just because of lack of implementation, are, you know, are not being you know, readily accepted. As IoT matures, we're coming to some expected and unexpected realizations. Over-the-air updates, which become, you know, more and more mandated, are complex. They're very software intensive, and this is usually a stumbling point from what we see for many of our customers. How you successfully implement reliable and secure over-the-air updates in your IoT product. Those are pitfalls that you need to be aware of. Virtually everyone we deal with underestimate this level of complexity. Another area that's interesting is security vulnerabilities. IoT is not immune to being hacked, being taken over by hackers, things of that sort. And even to the point where we see, for example, whole government entities like California passed State Bill 327 dealing, you know, which basically is a first pass attempt at regulating security in IoT. And what's interesting about it is this has actually maybe caused more confusion as to, am I compliant with these new bills, or am I one step away from another government entity implementing an interpretation that I am not prepared for? And will I have to do an over-the-air update to be compliant? So these are things that, you know, as IoT, we have to kind of, you know, take a look at. Rapid changes in the cloud. We're seeing a lot of consolidation between cloud service providers. And we've actually seen instances where people have made a choice on cloud service provider that later become orphaned if you will. Their cloud service provider is absorbed by someone else, and their service, their IP address goes away. These are things that, you know, long-term, if you're thinking about a product that's going to be in the field for, say, 10 years, you have to be aware of. Another area, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, is the so what factor. It's interesting. What we're finding out is data for data's sake is interesting at first, but over the long term, and I will tell you, my video doorbell, I really don't even pay attention to it when it goes off anymore. There's a so what factor. It's cool. I've implemented it, but I think we're getting into this point of data saturation. And I encourage anyone that's looking at a implementation to think about, does the data I'm creating, does it prompt me to behave differently? And not differently at first. It's easy to say, hey, this is cool, take a look at this. But 5 months, a year, 5 years into it doesn't cause me to behave differently. So with that, you may have seen throughout this presentation, this 5 years out, it's kind of our marketing logo that says that's where the tangible future meets what's practical. So the things that are possible is meaning what's practical. 10 years out is still science fiction. We don't have the technology, the silicon yet to implement that. So 5 years is those things that today, the ideas that are being kind of gelled, that are being generated, and we're going to begin working on over the next 5 years, are going to become mainstay, you know, huge products 5 years from now. So that's our motto. If you're wondering what did the 5 years out mean, we are working on things today that in 5 years are going to be the next cool products. 2 years out, you should be in the final development stages. We'll say that at this point. So today, I want to thank you for your time. IoT is continuing to evolve. We see it in these new standards that are coming out. I encourage everyone to keep track. There's a wealth of information, either through us or through others. There's a wealth of information. You will never stop learning about what's new and connectivity and IoT. So I encourage you to enjoy that ride. We certainly do, and we can help guide you forward through that. So with that, I want to thank you. I think my time is done, and we'll leave time, I guess, Caroline, if you want, during the chat session this afternoon for questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. Just a wonderful presentation as always. As Paul mentioned, Arrow's been sponsors of RIoT for many years, so we're just very thankful for your partnership. While Aurora Group and PUI Audio are getting set up, if Paul sees any questions in the chat box, and if he missed any of those, again, as he mentioned, please feel free, stick around, come back to the networking that begins at 12:30 p.m. brought to you by Crosscom, our sponsors for the day, where you can win a Bluetooth sleep headphones and 3D eye mask.
I will try to answer some of these questions as they go through. So thank you again, Caroline, and thank you for your time today, everybody.
Thank you so much, Paul. So it looks like Aparna Brent, you have the ability to steal the screen from Paul. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, everyone. Coming up, we have Aurora Group and PUI Audio, so they will be up in just a second.
Can you see my screen okay?
We're good. Thanks, Aparna.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's bring this over. Wow, that was a tough presentation to follow, Paul. You did such a great job. Now it means we have to work harder. Thank you for the kind introduction, Caroline. We've been a supporter for the RIoT for many years, so we appreciate all the good work that you do for our team and industry, sincerely. Before we get going on the PUI technical audio presentation, I'd like to tell you a bit about the Aurora Group. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. There we go. Today, we're going to be presenting a little bit about the design consideration for audio devices, presented both by the Aurora Group and PUI Audio. A bit about our group. We're a manufacturer's representation firm, been around for over 30 years, technical experience in electronic components and mechanical components industry. We support our manufacturers and customers on the whole East Coast. Many of us have technical experience or are engineers. On our team in the Southeast, we have Bob Kirkland, myself, Ken, Bob Ball in the Carolinas, Bruce in Tennessee, Karen in Georgia, and of course, Kathy is our inside sales manager. What we do, the Aurora Group facilitates electromechanical product solutions in various market segments, ranging from IoT products, defense, CMs, contract manufacturing, computer, automation, robotics, nearly everything we get involved with. We strive to assist in solving technical challenges by offering new and existing electromechanical product solutions to the engineers, manufacturers, and the like. We develop and maintain long-term trusted partnerships in the technical advisory role, as well as supply liaison. We really strive to provide the total quality solution, or the total solution, cost of ownership solution, through from the very early concepts through production. Here's a glance of the products we support, all kinds, batteries, capacitors, heat sinks, transformers, mechanical parts. In today's presentation, we're going to focus on PUI Audio. You can see squarely in the center. PUI offers many types of audio devices, ranging from indicators to microphones and high-end speakers, high-end microphones. PUI has many capabilities and is happy to assist in efforts in speaker placement and microphone placement, which is really key to making sure these operate properly. Due to the recent pandemic, we see that we're more in the touchless world. Touchless human interface has really taken hold, of course, to reduce transmission of germs from surfaces to people. Audible communication allows direct communication to the devices and equipment. Don't have to touch it. PUI, of course, offers a variety of top-notch choices here and for many applications. Pretty much, you could use these devices for anywhere audible communication is needed. Here's a glance at our technical agenda, talking about microphones, choosing the right sound solution, MEMS microphones, HD microphones, speakers, and of course, we're going to try to leave time for question and answers, but please do send your questions in the chat, and I will relay them as we go. To present, we'll have the technical talk today from Mike Vanderbroek. He's a senior applications engineer at PUI Audio. He's been at PUI Audio for 5 years and has deep experience in applications, audio applications. He's formerly with the U.S. Air Force, so thank you for your service, Mike. And of course, Brent Montgomery is regional sales manager at PUI. He's been with PUI for over 15 years, and he's been the leader and beating the drum for the growth at PUI and has created the roadmap for the incredible lineup of PUI products. Please welcome to Brent to start his technical talk. And again, feel free to ask your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. So go ahead, Brent, and steal my screen.
Yeah, thanks, Aparna. I appreciate it. That was a good introduction, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak today on behalf of PUI Audio. And as Aparna had made reference to, there is an affinity, especially during the pandemic. It's highlighted the ability to interface and have the human interface as a touchless solution. And that's where the audio solution and the products that we offer really come into play. So I will share my screen here.
Do I need to stop the share?
Yes, you need to stop sharing, Aparna.
Okay.
So I will. So a little bit about our company. We're built on 5 pillars. I do want to do a brief introduction, and I'll make this quick because we need to get into the technical aspects of the presentation. But we're built on 5 pillars, and that's our breadth of product, our quality, our engineering and our value proposition as such, our custom design abilities, and our new product innovation. So those are the foundation of our company, and those are the pillars upon which we pride ourselves and we build upon with all of our audio solutions. A little bit about the breadth of product, and Aparna had introduced, and this is just a real quick high level, and I won't get into any technical details, but these are the product categories that we offer. We are going to stick to the speakers and microphones for the purpose of this presentation as it applies to the IoT industry. So, but we did want to let you know we do offer a full range of audio components, ranging from raw piezo elements all the way up through large speakers and sirens. So we'll talk about the mics and speakers later. One of the key things that we wanted to let everyone know during the presentation is, this is all that we do here at PUI. We're experts in audio. Mike is certainly an expert in the engineering side. And that's one of our large value propositions. It's not just a quality product in ISO facilities, but we also have a strong focus on new product innovation, and we consider ourselves a total sound solution. So you'll see that moniker repeated itself across our marketing campaigns. So we don't just want to be considered what's called a buzzer in a box or a speaker in a box. We really want to be the true full solution. This slide shows a number of characteristics and a number of factors and things that design engineers have to account for, and in some cases are challenges to design engineers when you're designing in audio components. These are all, characteristics and items that PUI Audio has solutions to. So these are all things, when you come across these things during your design phase, these are all areas where we are very willing to help design engineers, and we have the resource to help you get through, if it is a challenge or just an area of non-expertise. We do have that expertise. Aparna did make reference to our agenda, but just real quickly, we'll go over the first 4 bullet points there are going to be on microphones, and then we'll segue into our speakers. So again, it's design considerations. We feel that, the pandemic obviously has brought about, and brought to the surface how important two-way communication is and how important human interface is in areas where you're touchless. So again, we wanted to bring this to the forefront. I think the timing is great. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Vanderbroek to start the technical part of the presentation.
A nice demo kit you have there.
Thanks. Yeah, we're actually looking at redesigning our demo kit. The pandemic, of course, put that on hold. So we're just waiting for the timing to be right so we can deliver this, in person. And that's always going to be your best experience as an in-person demonstration. So thanks, Aparna. Thanks, Brent. Thank you, everybody here, for your time. I want to jump right into it. So with IoT, one of the most important aspects is the human interaction. And the human interaction is going to be video, but it's also mostly audio. And for audio, you have to have high quality microphones, high quality speakers, but even more than that, you have to have a really good idea on how to implement them and use them in your product correctly. One of the things that we pride ourselves on in PUI Audio is our ability to take somebody in a startup type role at a company and take them from a beginner to an expert user of our products. Because it's really great for us if we get to design everything for you, but it's even better for you if you're able to design and implement these ideas, because once you get one product finished, you can move on to the next product with ease. So to guide everybody through microphones, I've developed this Choosing the Right Sound Solution PDF, and these are all available at our website, puiaudio.com, inside of the resources section.
Okay. Could you expand that a little bigger?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Good, thank you.
No problem. So what we want to do is explain the different types of microphones that we offer. The first is a dynamic microphone, also known as a receiver. This basically translates moving air into basically a moving voltage, right? So this is a sensor that detects air movement and translates it into voltage. You take that voltage and you implement it however you need to, whether that be connecting to a codec or connecting to a preamplifier and amplifying the output to a speaker. The second most popular design that we have is what we call an ECM, or an electric condenser microphone. And this works on the same principle in that you have a moving diaphragm, and what that does is actually changes the capacitance, and you use that change in capacitance to translate that into an audio signal for use. Last but not least are MEMS microphones. The MEMS microphones are pretty much built the same way as an ECM, in that you have a change in capacitance that you take and you turn that into something else. We have multiple types of MEMS and electric condenser microphones, as well as the receivers. And these all have different sensitivities. The sensitivity is basically how much output a microphone is going to generate with a given input. It's a little bit backwards. Basically, the lower the number, or the further you get away from zero, the less output you're going to have. As you get higher, you're going to get more output from the actual microphone. You'll have to do less amplification to it. An area where you would want to choose a more sensitive microphone over another is in a quiet setting. So if you had we'll say a library environment, and you want to pick up a very small sound in a library environment, then you would want to use a really sensitive microphone. But if you're in a library environment and you don't want to pick up everything, you would use a less sensitive microphone. You also have 3 different polar patterns. The first is omnidirectional, which means it's going to capture sound 360 degrees around the microphone. That's probably our most commonly used microphone. And you could pretty much just drop these, wherever inside of a setting, and you're going to pick up everything around it. If you want to pick up just the user in front of the microphone, you would want to choose a unidirectional microphone. These are also called cardioid microphones and are very close to what you would see a musician use on stage, such as a singer or somebody miking a guitar amplifier, and you're only trying to pick up one sound. And as you can see, the actual frequency response of this type of microphone as you move away off axis drops pretty significantly below 5,000 hertz. So what that's going to do is prevent spurious sounds from entering in the microphone that you don't want to pick up. If you were to do something like an array, where you're trying to pick up and figure out where somebody is, unidirectionals work really, really well because you don't have all of the overlapping patterns. So you can actually detect from one microphone pretty much where somebody is in a 6 microphone circular array. Last but not least is the noise canceling microphone. And how these work are they have holes in the back and holes in the front. And as you move away from the microphone, it starts to cancel out the lower frequency sounds. These are typically used in an automotive environment where you would have a lot of road noise or a lot of wind noise. And what it's going to do as you get lower in frequency and further away, it's just going to drop out all the stuff you don't want to pick up.
So Mike, can you turn down the sensitivity of a given microphone?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good question. So the microphone sensitivity is based upon the rated voltage. So that's usually going to be 2 to 3 volts for most of our microphones. If you want to make a microphone less sensitive, then you would just basically lower the input voltage from like 2 volts DC to 1 volt DC. And then you can also add a resistor in series with the output of the microphone. If you go back to where our drive circuit is, so this is the recommended drive circuit for most of our microphones, especially our ECMs. So you're going to apply a voltage to the input, and then you're going to use a DC blocking capacitor on the output. So if you wanted to reduce the voltage, you could simply insert a series resistor here. Conversely, if you want to increase the sensitivity, you can just increase the voltage. What that's going to have as a side effect, though, is you're also going to start to amplify some of the noise. So if you want, more output, just be prepared that you might have to do more things to block more noise. That could make its way into your amplification or pre-amplification circuit. This is a diagram on how a down-firing or bottom-firing MEMS microphone is built. So you have a charge back plate, you have a diaphragm, just like an ECM. Sound comes in through the bottom here. It modulates this diaphragm. That modulation turns into a capacitive signal that goes to an ASIC. And then the ASIC turns it into a usable signal, and it's sent on to a codec or a preamplifier for either decoding or for use in another setting. Out of our MEMS microphones, let me see here. So with MEMS microphones, we have, like I said, we have 2 different types. We have a bottom firing microphone and we have a top firing microphone. The bottom firing seems to be the most popular for right now, but the top firing is a little bit easier to get closer to the external sound of your product. So sometimes that's going to be a little bit better of a selection. You want to gasket these to make sure that you don't have any sound leaking out the side. So the microphone has a direct path to the outside air. And that's going to prevent any type of change in frequency response.
What is the difference, or why would you pick top firing versus bottom firing microphone?
Right, so with bottom firing, it's a little bit easier to implement. You basically just have to gasket to the PCB. So I think that's why they're the most popular. With the top firing, you would want to choose that just because you're able to get it closer to this output. So sometimes that's going to give you cleaner sound. And also the PCB is not going to, sometimes a speaker can vibrate a PCB and that can make its way back into the microphone. Where if this PCB on a bottom firing is starting to vibrate, that sound is going to be really directed into the microphone. And it's really hard to gasket that because it's directly connected. So if you have a product that's going to contain a speaker, especially a speaker nearby, I would probably go with a top firing because they're easier to isolate from the PCB.
So I've got a couple questions here, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one, does the lowering the voltage to the microphone change the sound pressure level where distortion would occur?
So distortion is going to occur usually around 120 decibels and above at a distance of 50 centimeters. And that's just a function of that sound device generating that air pressure to the diaphragm. So the input voltage really has no effect on it. It's more, it's more how far that diaphragm can move, if that makes sense.
Okay. So back to the top firing versus bottom firing. So really the top firing MEMS microphone is going to be more sensitive, correct?
I wouldn't say more sensitive. What I would say is it's just easier to prevent sounds that you don't want getting into the microphone because the PCB isn't part of the sound hole, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And again, all of these PDFs are available on our website in our resources section. I'm going over them kind of quick because we have a lot of products to get to. So we do have analog MEMS microphones, which are really easy to implement. And then we also have digital MEMS microphones, which are a little bit more challenging, but they're still not, not too terribly tough to work with. Most of our MEMS microphones that are digital have a PDM output, but we do have one that does have an integrated I2S codec inside of it. So that is super easy to implement into other products that are using I2S machine language. Also with the I2S microphone, it's really easy to set up an array because you just change your hold time on the clocks. Also, our digital MEMS microphones have a full power mode. That's going to be basically the best performance you're going to get. A low power mode where you have a little bit of a reduced sensitivity, and a sleep mode where you can actually turn it off and it draws current somewhere in the microamps. So if you're going to be using if you're going to be using a battery powered product, I would highly recommend using a digital MEMS microphone versus any other microphone on the market. One of the unique things about our MEMS microphones is that we developed them to be the best in the industry. And by that, I mean, we wanted to have the most unit-to-unit consistency. So that way, in the event that you're setting up an array, you're not going to have very many issues to deal with in terms of anomalies. They're all going to produce almost the same output. So plus or minus 1 dB is a really tight tolerance. And then also we characterize the performance from 20 hertz all the way up and above 20,000 hertz. Just recently, we characterized these into the ultrasonic range, and those are available on the spec sheets on our website for each of our MEMS microphones. So we've got
a question here.
Yeah.
What is the future of hearing devices? What's the smallest size available in this MEMS microphone for hearing devices?
For hearing devices, so the 2.75 by 1.85 is the smallest that we offer. I think it's the smallest in the market as well, and it's only 0.9 millimeters tall. I don't know how much smaller you can actually go with the MEMS microphone because you have to account for that diaphragm being a particular size. And if you go down in size, that diaphragm gets smaller. And as you get smaller, that makes the diaphragm more fragile. So I don't know how much smaller they're going to be able to go until a new technology is developed. And it might be something along the lines of a receiver where you're using more of a speaker and it's a little bit more robust. But I think as of right now, this is going to be about the smallest that we go.
Yep. What's the range of cost, or just rough idea?
Right.
Yeah, they range in sub $1. They all have different prices, but these are sub $1 solutions.
Got it.
What I'll say about them is that MEMS microphones are a super scalable design. So we can, make a reel of 1,250 pieces in about the same time it takes to make, 12,000 or even, 120,000. So we can scale up and scale down production very quickly and very easily. As you go up, of course, the price is going to go down to a certain extent. We've done our best to try to keep these competitive with the industry, but at the same time, we're offering, as best we can, superior performance. What you'll notice with almost all digital MEMS microphones is that the performance above 15,000 hertz starts to drop. And that's more a case of the sampling rate. So the sampling rate is limited to, I believe, 48,000 hertz, which means you can only capture up to 24,000 hertz in sound. So that's why you'll start to see these drop. The peak itself is usually caused by this sound hole loading the internal cavity of it. So that's basically the tuning frequency of this particular device, if anybody was curious as to why these peaks are prevalent on the top firing especially. Not to just show you MEMS microphones, we also have high quality ECM microphones. Let me zoom out a little bit. A couple of years ago, we went to our microphone factory and we basically asked them or tasked them with developing a line of microphones with all the features that you could ask for, as well as the best performance in the industry. So we released this line of HD series microphones that have sensitivity all the way up to minus 24 dB, a signal to noise ratio of 80 dB, and we went down in size as small as we could in the ECM footprint, which is 4 millimeters, while still offering really good sensitivity, really high signal to noise ratio. Another feature that's built into each one of these are what we call GSM buzz blocking capacitors. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but you've probably experienced a situation where you had a cell phone near a microphone and you just started hearing this buzzing, and it was like a rhythmic pattern. That buzzing is a GSM generated buzz, and there's capacitors built into these that actually block that. So what the idea behind that is that you could use these microphones right next to a cell phone, and you're not going to pick up that GSM signal, which creates noise on down the signal chain. All right, on to speakers. Does anybody have any questions about microphones before moving on?
So far, we're pretty good. As they come up, I'll ask them.
Awesome, perfect. So the second part of the IoT experience is not only capturing the sound from the consumer, but also playing back sound or reproducing sound to as most authentic a level as possible. And the best way to do that is to use speakers that have a very linear frequency response. And what we've done is we've created a collection of speakers from 32 millimeters on up that we call our high fidelity speakers. All of these speakers have a super flat frequency response, so they can generate audio from as low as 150 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz without any dips or drops. So you get everything that's recorded. So that's most important, especially in a consumer audio device such as an Amazon Alexa or an Amazon Echo Dot, where you want that sound, the Amazon sound or the Alexa sound to sound like a natural person. The closer you can get to sounding like a natural person, the more you're going to have people really want to interact with your device, and the better the overall experience is going to be. If you go into most stores that have, the Bluetooth speakers on display, almost all of them are going to have really good speakers, but what you'll find is you'll gravitate towards something that has the best speaker. So what we always recommend to a customer of ours looking to design a product that's going to be used in an IoT device or a consumer device is choose a speaker that's going to be as large as possible, that you can fit, of course, and choose one of our high fidelity speakers so you get that instant impact of super high quality audio. We offer these in 4 and 8 ohms, 16 ohms. We can do almost any impedance that you need. We offer these in IP55, 65, IP67, and we have a few that are IPX8 for use in up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. We have a flat panel speaker that has super off-axis frequency response. What this means is that you could put this flat on a table facing up towards the ceiling, and people sitting around the room are still going to get the same experience as somebody who would be directly over top of that speaker. Out of this group, we also have a 92 millimeter speaker that can even work as a subwoofer. I loaded this into a 1 liter cabinet tuned to about 50 hertz, and we've listened to it, and it does really, really good bass response, especially on newer songs where they're adding a lot of compression, especially in the low frequency range. These were the new high fidelity speakers that we released in 2018. They include a tweeter, which is specifically for high frequencies over 2000 hertz. It's able to generate over 100 dB at 1 meter and over 120 decibels at 10 centimeters. So you can even use this as a siren if you were wanting to. We have a very weather resistant glass fiber cone 83 millimeter speaker in both 4 ohms and 8 ohms. If you're to use a speaker in an area that's prone to vandalization, or wet climates, this would be a really good speaker to choose.
So Mike, is it possible to use any of the microphones as a speaker or a speaker as a microphone?
Yeah, so all speakers can be used as a microphone. The speakers themselves, the diaphragms are too fragile, so they really can't be used as speakers. But yeah, you can absolutely use speakers as microphones. In fact, if you go up to a fuel dispenser or a gas pump, a lot of those systems are actually designed using the same speaker for audio output as the microphone to the attendant inside the gas station.
And which speaker would you recommend for haptic feedback?
So that's a really good question. Out of these speakers that we have on display, these are not really designed for haptic feedback unless you choose something very large that's going to basically reproduce what a subwoofer produces. However, we do have a line of what we call exciters. And what the exciters are, it's a product, and I have a demonstration for later, that is basically a speaker, but without the cone and without the mounting frame. And what it does is it mounts onto a surface, and it turns that surface or your entire product into the actual speaker. In addition to doing that, it can also act as a haptic feedback device. So you could do like buzzes and clicks, and you'll get that tactile feedback using the exciter.
Are any of these speakers standard for the 60601 medical applications?
That's a really good question as well. So what I typically tell customers is that almost all speakers that have a resonant frequency of 450 hertz or lower can be used to meet the IEC 60601-1-8 specification. Basically it's a specification that calls for a lower frequency. So that's why you're starting to see the industry trend to move away from indicators and transducers, which are really single tone devices, to speakers with lower resonant frequencies. The three speakers we have here are what we call our Copperhead series. The idea for this line was to create three speakers in three different sizes that are made in about the same way and have the same tonality, while packing up to 30 watts of power handling into a 78 millimeter speaker. These actually have frequency responses out to 40,000 hertz.
So Mike, what would be the best surface to mount those, or best material to mount those speakers on?
For the exciters, most of our customers are using aluminum, steel, glass. What I found works best is like a honeycomb type material that you'll sometimes see used as aluminum bulkheads on aircraft, but that's usually cost prohibitive. So I'll say that glass fiber or fiberglass is something that works really, really well. You want something that's relatively rigid, but at the same time, not so dense and lightweight. And the larger the surface that you have, the wider the frequency response is going to be. And I'll show that a little bit later when I do the exciter demo. For customers that are using speakers in IoT devices that are more wearable, such as a watch, a pendant, or just a very small device that you can place almost anywhere, they're choosing our PUI Audio Mobile Series speakers. These are typically what you find inside of a cell phone, and they come in sizes ranging from 12 by 5 millimeters all the way up to 18 by 13. In some cases, we're able to do larger sizes, such as I think 25 by 11 or something like that. And we can do these in different impedances as well.
And these are mounted in plastic or metal.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Where are these mounted? What kind of material can they be mounted in?
For the exciters or for these particular speakers? These are just your regular speakers, so they can be mounted in anything. So cell phones are where they're most used right now. Cell phones, tablets, laptops, touchscreen devices, doorbells, things like that. To get the most realistic frequency response out of these, what you would want to do is use a rear enclosure that's going to be somewhere between 3 cubic centimeters to 1 cubic centimeter. That's going to help promote the low frequency response. you want to shoot for as low a resonant frequency as possible. And that's what the enclosure does. It actually controls that resonant frequency. So if you use a really small enclosure, that's, we'll say 0.5 cubic centimeters or smaller, you'll start to see this resonant frequency rise, and the speaker will sound more thin. We also have 2 receivers in this line. The receivers are used for headphones. They're used for the ear, where your ear goes to on your cell phone. And they can also be used as microphones as well because of their impedance. So without further ado, I could show everybody a demonstration of an exciter.
Yeah, well, Mike is getting set up. You know, the presentation here, for the purpose of keeping it, you know, succinct and short, we focused on the larger speakers, some of the newer products, and then the small mobile series speakers. But for those of you that are looking at it and saying, you know, I'm in the middle of the range, he did show some 32, 36, but 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters, those are very common sizes, 28 millimeters. So we have a very large portfolio of speakers, of which are not included in this presentation. So we invite you to visit our website or reach out to the Aurora Group or us directly, and we can certainly you know, recommend a solution as such.
So when you're testing the speaker in your product, how do you relate it to the different sound levels at specific distances? Is there some kind of table for that?
So yeah,
Versus
we can,
distances for the product.
so typically most customers will look at our sensitivity specification and not really pay too much attention to the distance. Many of our speakers are rated at 10 centimeters if they're under 20 millimeters, and then we usually move up to a 50 centimeter measurement. As you move away from that distance, so out to 1 meter, 50 centimeters to 1 meter, you're going to lose about 6 dB off our sensitivity spec. Going from 10 centimeters to 1 meter, you're going to lose about 20 decibels. So every situation is different. What we try to do is we like to engage early on with the customer and try to get an idea as to how their product is going to be used, where it's going to be used, where the intended target customer is going to be from their speaker or from their product, and we guide it. We basically say, okay, if your setting is this, then we think the average ambient sound is going to be this, and you need to overcome it by about 15 dB. So we have a whole process that we go through, and we try to guide everybody, as opposed to just giving out just, I don't want to give out like cookie cutter statements or cookie cutter diagrams, because every single application is different. So what we try to do is steer customers in the right direction, as opposed to just, you know, give them as many products as we can. So we try to cut it down once we talk to a customer to about, you know, 3 to 4 SKUs for them to choose from. So that way they have a couple different directions they can go in. That is a really good question. That actually comes up quite often. Okay, so what I'm going to demonstrate is what we call an exciter. Are you able to see this? Well, I can zoom in here.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, so as I was explaining, the exciter itself is basically the magnet of the speaker. And then you have what we call the spider. And what the spider does is it controls what we call the former, which is where the voice coil is. So there's no cone, there's no exterior frame. So all you're getting is this movement that you normally do with the speaker, but instead of moving a diaphragm, you're going to be moving the surface of your product internally. This is our pocket amplifier. We send these out to our salespeople. This is the latest version. I think this one has about 10 watts of output, and I also added a Bluetooth connection to it. So hopefully you'll be able to see that in the field here soon.
So I know why you're getting that going. If if anybody has a need for just trying to figure out where to place the microphones to get the best use or the best sound or the best sensitivity, PUI audio engineers can really help. Just assist in all that. Sending a product over there, they can send it back.
So this is the exciter and open air, not much sound. So the actual product itself should have some type of enclosure. If you did want something really, really dense like this cable, you're not going to get much output compared to the enclosure. So yeah, you can literally turn anything into a speaker with the exciters. So this is something that a lot of our customers have been gravitating towards, because not only are they able to get really good sound, high fidelity sound with, without doing much design work at all they're doing is just basically attaching it to the device and away they go. This is our 53mm copperhead speaker. Now this is not in an enclosure, so you're not going to get the low frequency response.
You probably want to zoom in a little bit more now that you're far away.
Yep.
But I think with the exciter, what's neat is now you can hermetically seal your container and box, and you can eliminate the perforations and still get a good sound quality for communication.
Absolutely, and not only that, they have really good off-axis response because of how they work. They create what's called a planar wave. So people who are basically not in front of the device get almost the same level of quality of sound as people who are directly in front of it. So I'll just demonstrate the importance of the enclosure. So this is just the 53mm copperhead speaker in open air. What happens is you have the front interacting with the back of the cone, and that cancels out any sound that's beyond this dimension in terms of wavelength. So once you put it inside the enclosure, and I don't know how well it translates, but you can actually hear the difference in sound with an enclosure and without an enclosure. So one of the main takeaways I would want everybody to have is that in order for a speaker to perform as good as possible, you would want to put it in some type of an acoustic enclosure. And what that's going to do is it's going to prevent that cancellation from happening. So you get a little bit more bass response and much less cancellation than you would otherwise. That's really all I have to show. So we can open the floor for questions if you like.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Mike. Please, if you have any questions, group, please post those in the group chat. We will give it a couple minutes. Great presentation, guys. Thanks, Aparna, for helping with all the questions. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks to the whole RIoT organization, yourself especially. And we would invite anyone that was on the call. We would invite you that if you have any kind of questions in the audio spectrum, if you have anything as it pertains to designing in a speaker, microphone, or even an audio indicator transducer, which we didn't go over. We would welcome you to contact either the Aurora group or us directly, and we'd be happy to provide a solution for you. So again, thanks to the RIoT organization for having us and giving us the platform to show off some of our wares, and we invite everyone to come experience our value proposition. So thank you.
Brent, there's a question that came in. Is there anything in the pipeline to develop better headphones than the AirPod Pro?
That's a good question. So what that comes down to is basically the state of technology that we have currently. What's been going on is that people are moving away from the balanced armatures that are used in a lot of the headsets or a lot of what we call the in-ear monitors, moving back towards traditional style transducers. So when you say better, there could be a lot of opinion thrown in there, right? So everybody experiences audio differently. What I like is probably something that Brett doesn't like, which is probably something that somebody else doesn't like. But as far as the technology goes, there are a couple of surface mount speakers on the horizon that are being developed to basically shrink the overall package size. And what that will allow people to do is use multiple drivers inside of a headphone. So currently, I think there's a company called Westone, and they make in-ear monitors that use up to 6 balanced transducers. So there's actually 6 different speakers inside of that headphone, and it's a really complicated design. What I think is going to happen is you'll see a transition into more surface mount speakers that are custom built for a particular frequency range. So instead of using multiple drivers that need to have a crossover or electrical filtering built into it, you'll see custom designed size-wise drivers that are made for high frequency, mid frequency, and low frequency, all being incorporated inside of a small headset or in your headphone.
So another question has come in, thanks. Do you have recommendations for psychoacoustic bass emphasis algorithms that will work well with your drivers?
Max bass is an algorithm that I'm most familiar with. What they're doing is they're basically, and whoever asked, they probably already know, they're taking the fundamental frequency and they're basically playing the harmonics above it. And what that does is it tricks your brain into thinking you're hearing a sound that's lower in frequency than what you actually are. What I mean by that is like 20 hertz is about the extent of our human hearing. And a lot of speakers don't play very low, down to 20 hertz. So the trick is if you have a frequency of 20 hertz being played, you would play multiples of that. So that'd be like 40, 80, 160, 320. And if you play those harmonics, it tricks the brain into thinking that you're hearing the 20 hertz. So it's really cool technology. There's that, and there's, I think you could just use frequency multipliers, honestly.
Yeah, I think the question is more around the hearing devices. So I think you answered it quite well. I see who's asking, so we probably want to take a little bit more offline on your questions since you have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no problem.
And any other questions anybody else has? I think we're pretty close to our end, right, Carolyn?
Yeah, you have about 8 minutes left. Tim is here, so we could get started early with his.
I remember we were running late when we started, so we tried to condense it a little bit more.
Appreciate that. If you don't have any questions, if you think of questions later, again, I encourage you to come back to the networking half hour at 12:30 p.m. Where all of our speakers will be, and we'll be giving away that great prize from Crosscom. So again, thank you so much, Brent, Mike, and Aparna. It's really awesome.
No problem.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And Tim will get set up here. Tim has been a longtime supporter of RIoT DNA Group, so we're really excited to have him here. He's done all kinds of stuff with RIoT, including lunch and learns and accelerator programming workshops. So we're really excited to have him here today for our last session of week 1 of Developer Month. Thanks for being here, Tim.
All right. So Caroline, just real quick, you've stopped my screen sharing. So if you want to.
Oh. There you go, Tim. You should have it now.
All right, there we go. Yeah. So Caroline, thank you for the accolades. It has been fun to be on the ride that RIoT has gone through over the last five or so years, and we've seen a lot of things come into the organization. A lot of them have grown. A few things have sort of departed, so it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it's been a fun ride, and looking forward to a fun ride to continue. If we want to get started, or if you want to wait a few minutes, I'm not too sure. Caroline, you want to just hold off a minute or two, or you want to just jump right in?
Go ahead and get started, Tim.
Okay. All right.
Please, if you don't mind. Thanks.
All right. Good day, everybody, and thanks for joining. Hope you're all healthy and safe. My name is Tim Sweet. I'm with the DNA Group. We are an integrated solutions provider with disciplines in HMI, human to machine interfaces, connectivity, contract manufacturing, and we are located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Get our mouse to work here. Hang on a second. Switch to. So this session will focus in on sensors, their new paradigm, and why did that shift? We will look at ways to take advantage of the technology out there, even if you don't find an exact match or a good match. We will review a little history, try to put sensors into a larger context of technology trends, and then explore the sensor range that is currently available. And finally, look at how you might move forward. Wikipedia, anybody who knows me, is my go-to source for a lot of technical information. But this little definition struck me as a little misleading. I'll let you read it. So that final phrase in the first paragraph, which says a sensor is always used with other electronics, just seems to be too narrow and a qualifier that does not need to be there. So I went searching for other sites and definitions, and although I could not find a concise phrase, I think that the measuring of the boundary between the digital and the real world is a better placeholder for our discussion ahead. Interestingly, this broadens the scope to include our most common sensors, the ones that exist in nature and indeed even in our own human body. I share this next chart taken again from the web because it's representative of multiple sources that point to a continued growth in the sensor arena that will drive and will be driven by the data economy. The sensor technologies break new boundaries daily, putting them at the core of the data economy, part of this new paradigm. In the bigger context of technology, this first paragraph from the web on trends sums up a lot of what we are seeing on a daily basis as customers in all markets push their technology boundaries to keep pace with the ever-evolving IoT paradigm. Our very own RIoT group captured this well as they have rebranded themselves not as an IoT community, but as a data economy thought leader. Moore's Law combined with analytics or AI and the World Wide Web provides the tsunami we are all riding and hope to earn our livelihood from. The idea of a throwaway sensor 20 years ago just did not exist. The culmination of the electronics revolution, the advances in data manipulation, and the technologies available in MEMS, the miniature electromechanical systems, has created an abundance of devices available in the market at ever lower price points. These first couple of slides provided a background on why sensors are important, why they will continue to be important, and why this touches every one of our customers and markets. Don't think of sensors as industrial automation devices. We have looked at the history of sensors, the new paradigm, the current trends, and the continuing evolution of sensors based on the data economy, but what is out there right now? If you are younger or have simply forgotten, the picture on the right is a humidity sensor that was very common in usage in the early 2000s. Think about it. In 2000, we were using a large, clunky device about the size of a TV remote that functioned with a moisture-sensitive tape in an enclosure housing a snap-action switch to sense humidity changes to control the humidifier or dehumidifier, etc. This one is actually one of ours, but there were many competitors in the marketplace at the time. The transition to a small, picture on the right, thumbnail size device is less than 20 years old. And today's humidity sensors inside electronic devices, such as smartphones, can fit on a pinhead. The march to miniaturization is like the brooms in The Sorcerer's Apprentice for all you classical music or Fantasia fans. Or for those of you who are more technically driven, this is Moore's Law at work. So DNA Group has been in the sensor business for a while. And if you use the broader term, the snap action switch is really a sensor, since its generic name is not micro switch, that's a trade name, but limit switch. It senses a physical boundary and translates that to a binary signal, either off or on. Today's smart devices are smart, due in a large part to their, in large part because of the embedded sensors. Typical examples of some of the smart devices reveals how sensors are ubiquitous, almost as ubiquitous as the IoT itself. The smartwatch, for example, includes a touch display, which, among other things, is an input sensor, or more accurately, an array of CapTouch sensors. A pulse or heart rate sensor, a GPS sensor, air pressure sensor, a 3-axis accelerometer, pulse oximeter, moisture or humidity sensor, geomagnetic compass, BLA and ANT, etc. Looking at a smartphone, the basic model will include 4G, Wi-Fi, BLE, GPS, a touchscreen, one microphone and one camera. But the high end will include 5G, LTE, ultra wideband, Wi-Fi, BLE, Air 3D telemetry, GPS, touch screens, microphone and camera, at least 2, fingerprint or retina recognition, Hall sensor, proximity, geometric, gyro sensor, barometer, light sensor, accelerometer, wireless charging. I'm getting tired going through the list here. I'm reading off a script. So pretty long list. A smart thermostat, besides temperature, includes Wi-Fi, a motion sensor, that humidity sensor that we looked at before, but obviously in a much smaller package, and voice recognition, microphone, and BLE. I have defocused these pictures for branding issues, but as I will explain, you will get the idea. If you search for sensors on the web, or go to your favorite electronics distributor, such as DigiKey, or Arrow, or Mouser, whoever, you will literally find thousands and thousands of components. DigiKey, for example, lists over 150,000 sensor devices in about a dozen categories. But most of these are components. They are specific in what they do, and they are not packaged to meet the real world. They have to be integrated into a device. Protection from the elements, providing power, some way of attaching them to a set of handlebars or kitchen appliance, communicating with other devices, all have to be designed and developed around that particular component. Sensor devices, on the other hand, are also readily available. You can even find them on Amazon. But these are developed and packaged to meet specifications and environments very specific, whether it's industrial, household, healthcare, etc. For actual sensor devices, a web search will yield a similar plethora of products. There are many traditional players that have been making large industrial sensors operating on traditional power level voltages, as well as digital level signals. You can quickly get lost in their catalogs to decipher the various families and configurations, from everything to proximity sensors to complex photometric comparators. There are also many new players, such as Adafruit, that drop multiple sensor components into a development board that you can play with and launch your product in relatively little time with little hardware design. But most of these are packaged and tuned to specific requirements and are priced accordingly. Others, like development boards, have a little bit of everything and again, are priced accordingly. Effort is required to search and sort through the options, develop your specific application, and then put them into production. This is a viable path, but the resources can be lengthy and the resulting product cost may not meet your targets. So to have a better understanding of how the design affects the cost, I would like to take a more detailed look at some devices. To do that, to save on proprietary information, I will use some of our own existing products. The series of sensors we currently offer are based on industrial applications typically. They are focused in on 3 technologies: sensing of gases, objects, or liquids. There are other technologies out there such as motion, accelerometer, gravity, force, photometric, color, positioning. You get the idea. It's not to say we can't and will not be in those areas. We simply are not there yet. Then within each technology, there are multiple sensing types used in multiple boundary applications. The next several slides I'm going to take to highlight the capabilities, configurations available in each of these categories. We will do a quick overview and then take a deeper dive to review some of the specifications that differentiate each product and drive the product cost. Air or gas sensing devices are split into 2 types: air pressure and air quality. Air pressure is used mainly in a motion or a position sensor in a conventional pneumatic control system. The air quality sensor, on the other hand, device is measuring particulate matter down to the micrometer level using laser technology. To give you an idea, here's a look at the air pressure sensor in a couple of typical applications. Pretty industrial. We have 2 types of proximity sensors. The traditional inductive sensor detects the presence or absence of a metal object interfering with the conductive path. And the other is a magnetic sensor, which detects magnetic changes in magnetic fields in the sensor's boundary area. The next 2 are really just variants of the proximity sensors designed for specific applications. One is using an infrared light source and detector to sense motion without physical touch, and the other uses a propeller with an embedded magnet to detect fluid flow with a Hall sensor built into the housing. This last group are both used in sensing liquids, but one is a level sensor and the other is used to measure temperature. All right, now for a deeper dive. These sensor devices have been captured in data sheets, which I have copied into the slides. I'm not anticipating that you're going to read these from the slides, but what I'm going to do is highlight some of the information to provide some design and development conclusions. The water level sensor is rather a simple technology internally, but the packaging of this sensor is critical. The environment they operate in include immersion in the liquid, resistance to chemicals, temperature, solids abrasion, sealed connections. It is just as important to understand what you need in your packaging versus what you don't need. Each feature of the device costs money. So do not pay for what you don't need. The proximity type sensors have a little more complex functionality, and that is provided by some circuitry and/or a microprocessor built into the sensor. Again, these are designed to specific requirement ranges and are built into very compact packages. Converting that sense signal to a conditioned digital output requires componentry that must be miniaturized and packaged to suit the environment. The magnetic sensor, for example, is about the size of a hearing aid. To give you an idea of the size of this part, it is essentially dwarfed by an American quarter. At just 5 millimeters in diameter, the sensor can be mounted into some very tiny spaces. It is an overmolded design with the sensor component and some of the electronic parts encapsulated in high temperature plastics to provide protection from water and oil, as well as protection from vibration, mechanical shock, and electrically insulated. Because of its size and the way it is packaged, it is assembled in an almost completely automated process. This makes the tooling and initial investment for the assembly process rather high, but the part cost is very low, and the tooling can be reused for many variants of the same basic package. The photometric type devices become even more complex, requiring a functional block diagram to understand its capabilities, and packaging becomes more complicated as well. The dimensions of the opening have been designed and optimized around a particulate size and application. The air quality sensor is a good example of a complex set of functions within a miniature package. Think about what is inside: a miniature laser, a light detector, a micro capable of computing long algorithms in milliseconds, and all that ancillary componentry to make it talk to other devices. Not trivial, and a good example of MEMS technologies. Looking at the detailed construction of the sensor device, the packaging of the functional components looks like a miniature jigsaw puzzle. Fitting in the laser, the optical sensor, some ionization coils or springs, looks like a tiny maze. The PCBA, which holds several of the components in critical physical space, is sandwiched in between the two outer covers, which also act as shields from outside magnetic and electrical interference. The details of the channels, which act as the air passage paths, are molded in with precision tooling. It is a very compact and dimensionally critical package. My favorite is the pressure sensor module that looks and operates more like a mini controller for industrial applications. It has a small display with menus and pages, and allows the operator to set up the logical outputs of the module. I'm not sure if it has enough computing power to put the Apollo astronauts on the moon, but probably close. Here are examples of some sensor products that are complete end devices. These particular products have been developed for Sigfox, but the designs are easily transformed to other LPWAN technologies such as LoRa or NB-IoT, or can be converted to cellular or even Wi-Fi. The module is designed to use multiple types of sensors, which can include temperature, CO, carbon monoxide, accelerometers, etc. So the last few slides were examples of some of the things we have done and are in production. Now I'll turn to look at a couple of examples of some of the things that are possible or that we can do. This one is a hypothetical case, but not far from some of the ideas we've been asked to look at. Combination sensor packages is something we provide, and this identifies some of the steps in the development process we manage. A shout out to Honeywell here. They have a large array of miniature sensors for various technologies, and this is one of their very highly sensitive pressure sensors used in weight sensing, in vending operations, and other typical types of applications. Mating that up with a proximity sensor to verify the location of a vessel or cup makes good sense. If we look at mating this one with our XPM sensors, at face value, looks like a good idea. The operating environment ranges are similar, operating voltages are similar, but our team would evaluate the entire proposal and look at the performance characteristics as well as the mechanical package, and would likely come back and offer an alternative proximity sensor device, likely not our own, that may be easier to package on a PCBA, or we might suggest another pressure sensor based on its packaging. Another hypothetical scenario would be to look at a family of BLE-enabled devices that can be used as a platform for multiple sensing options in a single design and package. In this case, we used an off-the-shelf development module from Atmel Microchip, another shout out, that uses ultra-low power features to provide extremely long battery life in a design that is essentially would go tetherless in a PAN, personal area network application. Again, the services we perform include designing and developing devices that support a family of end products. To summarize, there was a lot of detailed information available in our data sheets. But let's come back to our competencies. First, our strength is in packaging and vertical integration. The factory has developed a number of sensor series by packaging available technologies into a small, compact, or even miniature, rugged device. We are experts at making things. We are in the business of customization, either in a custom sensor package, or more likely into a custom application requiring multiple sensing technologies in a single package. We have and will help you co-develop new sensor technologies for very specific applications. What this means for developers of new products and devices. The path from an idea to full product launch is a long and iterative process. Sensing is usually not the first concern, and often a thorough research can locate several readily available sensing components or sensor devices that will come close to matching your requirements. As a proof of concept and for small trials, these can be a quick path to get something into the field. This is typically not a trivial process, but the second phase of the development process is just as arduous, if not more so, bringing the product to full production. The focus in this second phase is on cost and performance. Investors will need to see the bottom line and the timeline before committing financially to the endeavor. If the sensor you have chosen meets the cost and performance targets you have, then you're all set. Move on. But if the standard sensor part is not cost effective or will not meet all the requirements, then the timeline and financials will not meet critical thresholds. That is where customization with a manufacturer who is willing to do work with you becomes a viable strategy. Those options are available to you and may be worth exploring. So a quick summary. Sensors have come a long, long way, just in the past 20 years. Moore's Law, which is still alive and well, and MEMS, or miniaturization technologies, will continue to drive down the size and cost for all sensor solutions. There is a lot out there, and sorting through that will take time and energy. But if you can't find something that meets your cost and performance requirements, don't give up. There are resources out there that can help you. And thanks. I'll turn it over to Caroline, and Caroline, we can open it up for questions, or we'll take them from the chat. I think we'll take them from the chat line.
Thanks so much, Tim. Great presentation as always. I encourage you, if you have any questions, please do put those in the chat box. We obviously have some time left over. So we'll wait a couple minutes and see if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we will move into the networking portion. Tim, if people want to reach out to you privately to learn more, what's the best way to do that?
Easiest way, Caroline, is an email to tsuite@dnagroup.com. So.
Awesome. I just put Tim's email in here. We have a question here, a very specific question. Who are the biggest players in sensors or sensor platforms for greenhouse / glasshouse / agriculture?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Don't know if I'm capable of answering that one. I have not done an in-depth exploration of that particular one, but I'm willing to have a go at it and get back to the person who sent you in the chat. So if you want to send that down to me, I'll see if I can dig in and get some information back to them.
Sounds good, Tim. It's Tom, so we'll make sure you're connected.
Tom, that's a planted question.
Awesome. And if you like this presentation, I encourage you, Tim has some great recorded content on the RIoT YouTube channel, so you can always find it there. Here's another question. And Tom said, obviously had a specific project in mind for that question, so we'll make sure you two connect. But the next question was, how thin of a sensor could be available for the face of a golf club, or to get feedback without being on the face?
Again, I mean, I'm getting pretty technical. I would have to defer that to one of my colleagues back at the factory and then get back to them. So if you want to forward that to me. Given the technology that exists in a smartwatch, like the one I showed from Garmin, they're very small sensors. So, but exact package size I wouldn't know. So.
Thanks, Tim. And Rahul, we'll make sure that you connect with Tim directly. Next question here, Tim. Do you have a sensor for smart gas metering? We
have a proof of concept sensor. There's actually several different types of sensors used for gas metering. There's typical gas meter, the commercial gas meters that are required by the regulations in that industry are usually of two types. One that uses a pulse sensor that we can read, and then the other type has more embedded I want to say infrared signaling technologies that if you know the proprietary algorithms or not algorithms, but the protocols they use, then those can be used to read. And there are several commercially available devices that can actually do that, and they're usually tied to either a LoRa or a Sigfox type of application.
Thanks, Tim. Next question here from Bobby. I have seen collections system products with follow-on lab PCR for virus sensing. Have you seen any early product attempts at trying to sense viruses real time?
Boy, wouldn't that be nice? Well, we certainly don't go into medical applications, at least not in depth in that particular field. We deal more with the type of healthcare products like a smartwatch for biometric sensing, that sort of thing. So that would be outside of our field, our league. So I'm afraid I'd have to pass on that one.
Thanks, Tim. Give it just a couple more minutes for questions, and then we will open it up to networking. Again, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for being here. Tim, of course, with DNA Group, Keith and Scott with Wake Tech Community College, Paul Peterson with Aero Electronics, Aparna with the Aurora Group, and Mike and Brent with PUI Audio. Of course, want to give a huge shout out to CrossCom for sponsoring this event. Don Shin is here with us today from CrossCom. If Don would like to say a few words about CrossCom, we would certainly welcome that.
Yeah, so my name is Don Shin. I'm the founder and CEO of CrossCom. We've been in the area for over 20 plus years, building web, mobile, AR and VR, and IoT integrated apps for other organizations. If you all are, any of you are exploring building an app or an app platform, we'd be happy to chat and happy to help you learn more.
Thanks so much, John. So I encourage all of you to please, if you'd like, you can turn on your camera, turn off your microphones. If you'd like to be split into a separate breakout room with one of our speakers or sponsors for the day, we can certainly do that as well. We will be giving away the awesome prize of our Bluetooth sleep headphones and 3D eye mask. Again, thanks to CrossCom for that awesome gift in about 15 minutes. So please, I encourage you to network here. And this is just the week one of our 5-week Developer Month series. So join us next Wednesday. Dual Boot is our sponsor for next Wednesday. We'll also have Code the Dream by Google Fiber, SAS, Clario, and Tago.io. We also have the RIoT team with us, so Amber Cobb, Chris, and Tom Snyder here with us. So if you have any RIoT questions, we're happy to answer those as well. But please, I encourage you all to network.
It always reminds me of like that scene in the Victorian novel where it's like, now play. Now go and network, have fun. Right?
This is my first time ever doing a network over Zoom, so I'm really curious to see how this works.
It's an experiment we're all interested in.
I was making the same comment. I was just like, this is really weird. I've gotten used to getting that feedback from the audience when I present, so I didn't know if I'm like, am I making any sense at all?
No, your presentation was great, Paul. I learned something. I've been in this industry for 8 years, and it's one of those things where when you have somebody that can go down to that level, it's super interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it's interesting. I mean, I sometimes tell people I've got the coolest job in the world because I get to see a sneak preview from a lot of suppliers as to what's coming and things like that, and what's working, what's not working. So, and it's interesting to me how all of these pieces tie together: the sensors, the speakers, you know, as we take a look, it all starts IoT, as we say, it all starts with the speaker. So, I mean, the sensor or speaker or microphone, and it all kind of goes together.
Yeah, 100%. And 150,000 sensors available. And all the combinations thereof. It's wide open field right now.
That's just DigiKey.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. 150 items on the shelf, right?
Yeah, on the shelf. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm super curious, just in this group, like what are you most excited about? Like, what are you looking into? What's on your Google search list after this day of presentations? Oh, come on, somebody has to have something.
Well, first, Chris, I just want to say I love your office. It's a much better office than my office. I'll say that.
Yeah, this is a very Colorado office right now, so I like it.
That's not a virtual background.
The thing that I enjoyed the most about this morning actually was just hearing more about Bluetooth 5 and the things that are going on. We actually use Bluetooth a lot in the apps that we build for our clients, and I think it's just becoming more and more flexible and essential and helpful. In terms of like interesting information that's on the cuff of my mind, I'm still contemplating why Facebook is now requiring all Oculus VR headset users to like create Facebook accounts to use their headsets. I think that's the most idiotic decision. I mean, it totally makes sense for their business model, but it's horrible in terms of being able to use VR for where I think it has its bright spot right now, which is in the enterprise and in use by companies for furthering their like remote collaboration, telehealth, and stuff like that. So I think that's going to open up doors of opportunity for other VR headset vendors to make inroads into enterprise, because I think it's just anathema to enterprise to have to create Facebook accounts.
Yeah, HoloLens and Microsoft are really moving heavily into that space. Now the cost of their headsets is a little bit orders of magnitude higher than some of the Oculus equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Don, we saw the same behavior out of Microsoft kind of as Teams was really gaining steam, where you couldn't even join a Teams call that somebody invited you to without creating a Microsoft account. And, a lot of people, myself included, refused to do that. It's an unnecessary barrier to entry and using the tool. And Microsoft learned, and that, they've relaxed that requirement now. It'd be interesting to see if Facebook figures it out or not, but you really want people using your tech. And then if you create that incredible experience, then they're going to engage. But doing that forced engagement, I totally think is the wrong strategy.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. And we all, as we can see, we're doing this conference virtually. To me, and I've been accused of being ever the optimist, but to me, what's really exciting is to hear some of the ideas of customers or entrepreneurs, looking at it. We had the question about detecting viruses and things like that. And I think that's going to be a real, that's going to drive, at least for the next few years, whether the pandemic goes away or not. It's got us thinking about ways that we can apply, technology to solve problems that we're just at the cutting edge of it. And I think not that we have easy answers for that, but it's got everyone thinking that. So I think the opportunities are going to be rich.
Yeah, I agree with you. All kinds of sensors, voice command. I mean, you'll be, talking to all kinds of things in the public space just because you don't want to touch it. Like even pushing doors in public places, I'm like trying to use my foot or the edge of my elbow. Yeah, in there. Just simple stuff. It just seems like, you want doors to see that you want to come in. They should slide and open or close. Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
What's one of the most unexpected changes someone has seen, like since COVID, that like you just didn't see it coming at all, as far as just how people are doing business or living their lives? Or I'm just curious what kind of epiphany moments have come out of this.
I didn't think it would last this long, and I thought that, okay, mask, wear them. Everybody should wear them, and there's a lot of resistance to that, which was surprising.
Yeah.
I just read an article yesterday in the New York Times about how social distancing is creating social awkwardness because our social skills atrophy. And it made me a lot more self-aware and self-aware during calls like this as to whether or not we're all losing our social skills. And it makes me wonder like what we can do to, is that okay? And if so, if not, like what can we do to kind of, I guess, reverse that or fight against that in the meantime? Because yeah, you're right, this is lasting longer than I thought it would as well.
A simple thing, Don, that we've been doing is just changing the language. The fact is that we don't want social distancing. We want social closeness. We just need physical distancing. So we've been just trying to change the term to physical distancing and, to eliminate that connotation that we want to be socially isolated, because we don't.
Yeah, it took me a while to get used to like the Zoom calls and looking at myself on the computer. That was really strange. but now it's like 10 times a day. So I'm used to it.
I'm that way with the mask. When I first was wearing a mask, I felt like self-conscious or kind of weird about it. And now it feels totally normal. I don't feel uncomfortable at all wearing a mask into a grocery store or something.
Yeah. And you can be creative with masks, all kinds.
Yeah.
Simple ones, bandanas, anything, really. You just don't want that virus in your lungs, because if it gets in your lungs, yeah, it's going to kill you. If it lodges.
A mask that has a spot where you can like put a straw through or take it out and it still seals the little hole. So, then we could maybe reopen the bars.
Yeah.
Someone had a question here.
There's an entrepreneurial opportunity right there. I like that.
Yeah. I'm missing the RIoT beer events. That's what I'm missing.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, same here.
I see a question in the chat.
Probably.
Sensing solutions
Yeah, and
integrated
every
into
one of
masks.
them has like a microbrewery, a new style, a new flavor. I miss that.
Yeah.
That's what I miss.
Somebody just asked on the chat box about a mask with sensors embedded in it, and there are an awful lot of wearables out there right now with sensors. I haven't seen anything come available in the market yet that takes that technology and puts it into a mask, but I'm sure there's people out there developing them. So
the closest that I've seen is this company AO Air. It's not sensor per se, but it is like an active filtration. Which I always thought was interesting. I just dropped the link in there.
Okay.
I'm anticipating something, whether that's powered or, hey, your CO2 levels are going up. But I would love to see that. It'd be really interesting.
One of the things I'm finding difficult with the masks is speaking, because it takes your voice away, and it gets worse the more layers of the stuff you put on. Yep. I'd really like to see somebody who's got a good neck microphone or something that doesn't have to go into the actual voice stream, and a small speaker. I mean, this is something stupid stuff, that you used to be able to buy at Radio Shack some time back, that would become really usable in this type of market. I'm actually on oxygen, so I have the double problem that the louder I speak, the worse I get. So, right. It would be a big help, but I haven't seen anything like it. I started researching just recently for what's out there for microphones, and I know there's some good stuff going on in earpods that are actually, I think, microphoning through the bones in the ear, etc. But I don't know enough about it, and maybe there's somebody out there who knows how to close that loop.
Well, you must have missed our presentation on PUI audio. There's all kinds of different microphones, even speakers that act as microphones, so you can have one device. They can go both ways. It's not going to be Bose quality, but it should be very good.
Well, can we use it to get around this mask problem? I mean, I think this is a big market.
You just came up with an invention. That's fantastic.
I'll expand on that. I was looking at Tom's comments and Chris, your comments there, and I'm thinking what would be kind of cool is put enough intelligence to translate. So as we speak, you could have the mask translate to a different language. So
the Babuszczak, right? Didn't Google?
Yeah.
Google had the AirPod, the earbuds that was supposed to be doing that. It didn't work very well, if I remember correctly.
Oh, let's keep it simple so we actually build it. And, we can just keep from becoming hoarse from trying to talk through masks and not being able to hear the stuff. I mean, I find when I'm at the doctor's office, I can't understand what they're talking about because they're all masked up. And
so for those that aren't on the chat, so I've got 2 teams of students at NC State this semester. One is working on a mask concept that does closed captioning for just that reason that patients have trouble hearing doctors. But also there are lots of like loud industrial environments where people actually kind of augment what they can hear over the noise with some lip reading and so on. So we've got a team that's working on a kind of a closed captioning mask, and then we've got another team that's trying to integrate various kind of sensing and things into a mask for looking at air quality, virus detection, those kind of things. Even just proper placement. A mask that helps people to understand when it's actually covering their mouth and their nose instead of just their mouth, things like that. So if anyone would like to, offer expertise or thoughts or whatever to the student team, I'd be happy to connect you to the students and let them ask them questions and get some customer feedback.
Yeah, love to.
Yeah.
I've been fascinated with how much communication still occurs non-verbally from the nose down by not seeing the person's mouth. I thought a lot of it would come from eye expression, but I noticed that actually not seeing the mouth down or movement or expression of the mouth is also a big part of nonverbal communication.
That's true. That is absolutely true. And that's one thing that we miss. Yeah, the
I see
eyes,
some of those transparent masks. I see some have launched some transparent masks, I guess, for that part of that reason, which is kind of interesting.
I can attest to that. So a couple months ago, as one way to kind of, for my team to stay connected, I got Oculus Quest headsets, VR headsets for our entire team. And we did our semi-annual company summit entirely in VR. And the amount of expression that we were able to have by gesticulating with our hands and doing virtual fist bumps and high fives and et cetera, it actually feels a lot more natural than this Zoom call. And so we've now been exploring doing more remote collaboration meetings in VR because it just feels like we're actually spending time together and sharing the same space. I also had a couple thoughts, Tom, about like things that we did not expect. Firstly, you know, my personal story, I came back to this area after many years of living away about 1.5 years ago, now almost 2 years, to spend more face-to-face time with my team. But I think I finally capitulated and I'm now open to hiring more remote team members, which is something new for me, and I'm sure it's a kind of a thought process for a lot of businesses. So as kind of like my blatant aside, Crosscom is looking to hire an additional lead front-end web developer and lead back-end developer and UI UX designer. So if you or any of your friends are looking for work and to be part of a dynamic agency environment, please let me know. So that was my blatant plug. You know, the other thing that, on a positive note, the other thing that I really appreciate that I didn't expect is it seems like we're all okay with doing business on a more informal level. Like here I am in my home office / bedroom. And firstly, when this whole pandemic started, I wore collared shirts, and kind of like the standards got lower and lower over time. Other people's standards got lower and lower over time. And I actually appreciate that, because then it gets more about getting the business done and the tasks done rather than trying to put up a front. It's a kind of a reminder that we're all human, which I've appreciated.
I agree. It's nice.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that, you know, one thing, and I hate to talk about, you know, who may be the losers here, but I think you're onto something about things like commercial real estate, having offices and things like that. I know in my own home, I've got, there's myself, my wife, and my daughter, who are all working remotely. And it's quite interesting in her case, she actually is working for another state that she's never visited. She interviewed, she got the job right at the beginning of kind of the pandemic, and she's never visited physically that state. And I think it's changing attitudes about, you know, working remotely and things of that sort. And I think the internet's going to be an interesting piece of that, that we're going to find people that are, you know, wanting to move to, you know, other locations. And really one of the big deciding factors is, will there be, you know, can I have reliable internet connection and things of that sort? And I think it's going to drive kind of a whole, you know, demographic migration shift, if you will, over the next few years.
Yeah, you can move to the beach and still have a great job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and just to tack onto that, so I'm in Boulder, Colorado, but I have friends that are up in the mountain communities, and what they've noticed is not only is real estate going through the roof, but also the school districts are at their all-time high enrollment rates, which is really fascinating considering, you know, Aspen has never had a large number of school enrollments, but this year they're like way over committed. So it'll be really interesting to see how like the rural communities will see kind of a surge of these city folk, you know, escaping the city centers here. So
it should be a shout out for Wilson, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's more capacity now for the students because it's all virtual. And so you save that commute time, the teachers save that commute time, everybody saves commute time. So you could add 2 or 3 more students to, you know, grade papers and things like that.
And you start to realize that, yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges rural communities have had is that, you know, people tend to not start businesses in rural communities because they're worried about a lack of talent pool. But when your talent pool can participate digitally from anywhere, then businesses can be anywhere. So it's not only on the employee side that I can live and work wherever I want in some of these, these mountain resort communities that tended to be just, during the ski season, for example, can become year-round communities with people living there. But it also becomes an opportunity where you can actually start a business anywhere that has good broadband. And I think we're going to see, to some degree, I think we're going to continue to see urbanization. There are a lot of advantages of large areas, but you're going to see a lot more company formation in smaller communities with disparate staffs.
Yeah, Tom, I think you're spot on. There was some mention in the chat around CBRS, and we know that the auctions completed recently, but we're working with a lot of school districts, education districts around how can they provide that remote support now, broader depth to the education market with CBRS. So it's a rapidly changing space right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think CBRS is not only going to solve education, but it's going to be huge for healthcare and telemedicine. And if COVID's unlocked anything, it's that people realize now I don't have to go to a doctor office. We've talked about telemedicine for years and years and years, and it's not really picked up. Well, now, it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The boundaries just magically disappeared, right?
Yeah.
Tim, I found it interesting. You mentioned Moore's Law, and that's always been one of those things that, as we talk about Moore's Law, and it's a great reference because it basically states that the number of transistors will double every 18 months. And it was something that Gordon Moore made that statement. I want to say it was around 78 or 79. And it's something that's really driven the adaptation of technology. And one of the reasons that we have so much computing power is that just that fact that we've been able to get transistors and technology so small. And you made the comment about disposable sensors, and we really are in that today. While we all like to minimize waste, it's interesting that the ability for things like sterilization, the amount of energy to do certain things like that, using medical devices on one-time use, is a very interesting application, and it continues to drive, technology continues to reduce in cost, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we see the advantages of that, daily again, and what we do. So we see that package size go down, and the computing power of whatever it is that we're making go up, and it just adds on more and more capability for the end product that we're trying to, sell our devices into. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Speaking of Moore's Law, did anyone see the announcement of NVIDIA's new graphics cards, new GPUs, the RTX 3000 series? It's basically double the power for half the price. It's like, and it was just announced this past week.
Moore's Law. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these cards, of course, are more than just playing video games. It's about artificial intelligence, machine learning, the signal processing, real-time rendering of 8K, 60 frames per second, VR experiences is just incredible. Cryptocurrency mining, etc. Just unbelievable that, gosh, I would hate to have been the person to have bought a 2000 series graphics card 2 weeks ago.
NVIDIA seems to be getting it right. I've been even fascinated by their Jetson machine learning platform, because it's like when I buy one, a year and a half later, it feels antiquated in terms of the amount of machine learning computations it can do. It's just amazing how fast that they are moving into both the graphics, of course they've always been there, but into the machine learning space.
For sure. And that's pretty much what's been driving its stock market value in the past 2-3 years. It's just heavy investment and support in machine learning adoption. It's crazy.
And a big push towards edge. I think NVIDIA sees edge compute as critical. The amount of acceleration we've seen in NVIDIA engaging municipalities for smart city, for example, they're clearly see an edge play, I believe.
That is true. That is true. And just the whole AI virtual reality is bringing to life things that are, to me, just amazing. And the amount of software. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing is that although Aero lives very much in a hardware-centric world, we provide the building blocks how much emphasis is being placed around software development. You know, we used to say it was a 1-to-1 ratio. For every hardware engineer, you had a software engineer. Then it quickly became 3-to-1, 3 software engineers for every hardware guy. Now in some places we're hearing 10-to-1. And, you know, I'll jokingly say that's because the hardware guys are 10 times as smart as the software guys. But the reality is this computing power is so vast these days, and the capability, it's amazing, you know, the capability when we have literally trillions of operations per second or tens of trillions of operations per second that's available, you know, at a low cost.
Well, you need both software and hardware.
Yep.
That's
Well,
so I came from.
That's a human, isn't it?
But just to echo on what you said there, Paul, like I was on the founding team at Misty Robotics, and so we had, you know, 50 folks, but it was overwhelmingly software, just because the stitching between subsystems was such a big project, you know. And you have a variety of sensors. You've got like the brain, the lizard brain, like all the different stuff that has to communicate together. So that was a big deal. But yeah, software's eating the world.
Years ago, I was fortunate to, okay, I'm sorry.
I was saying that's what I was talking about, the future of hearing devices. So recently I retired from IBM, and before that I was working with some of the PhDs to think about the future of hearing devices, right? So think about right now you depend on the cell phone for Bluetooth for the hearing. If you put the cell phone chip and combine that with the hearing as well as a speaking device, right? And maybe you need that chip in your glass, like I see Paul right now. If you put it like something like a Google Glass, right? So you put it
just a reflection, but yeah.
Then there you go. So there are some innovative thoughts going on, working with some of the PhDs. So things are, you know, like the software and hardware, as well as, you know, more use cases will come in future where you don't need to even have the cell phone in your pocket, right? Everybody see their cell phone. How many times you guys see? Like maybe everybody see at least once or twice every 30 minutes, right? Just to check message or what's going on.
More than that.
Yeah, a minimum, right? And that's where our neck is bending, right? And some people say this neck will be the major issue for the new generation, because we all have not seen in last more than 20 years here cell phone, right? But we are seeing more and more now. So future of hearing devices, there are a lot of use cases. I appreciate this specific, you know, like different DNA group, Aurora group, how they are coming forward and giving me the new thinking, like whom I can approach. I mean, there are big names. Bose will be definitely looking, you know, like, okay, what we can do for the future of hearing devices, but, you know, how we can support each other. So that's what I'm looking for, and really appreciate all the presentations today.
Did everybody see the new Amazon wearable device that they launched recently? It's like in the last week.
Which one? Can you talk more
I don't
about?
remember the name of it, but it's a watch. And it has a couple interesting features. Well, it's actually not a watch. It's a wearable, but it actually doesn't have a watch face, which is kind of an interesting choice. But one of the things it does is it has the ability to try to read emotion into what you are speaking. So it's trying to give you, with an application on the phone, it actually can give you feedback. Were you excited when you said this? Could you have said it in a more motivating fashion? Were you depressed? It's actually trying to get into some ability to detect emotion, in addition to several other features. One other feature is, instead of using weight to check your body type, you actually take a picture of yourself in the mirror with the app, and then along with the device, it tries to track the amount of fat content in your body by using the image. So Amazon apparently hired a doctor to lead their initiative. So it's just really fascinating that they're getting into that space. But also I was fascinated the fact that it has a lot of things in it, but it doesn't have a watch in the first release. So are people going to be willing to wear 2 devices?
Halo band, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
Google has that Foley project also. I think, I don't know if any of you
Halo band. Yeah, that's right, Conrad. That's what they called it. Amazon Halo band. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So solely you can just do the action for the winding, you know, or unwinding, or just look at your watch and do certain things. All those use cases are, you know, like coming. My son finishing actually PhD this month at MIT. So they are all, you know, like into the new thinking all the time. I think their media lab especially.
There's a lot of people, I don't know about a lot, but there's several people mentioning concern about how Amazon is going to use this information, but they're trying to claim now that it's not going to be used in a bad way. But that's to be determined, I guess.
So as far as the debate on software versus hardware, I think for IoT, it's more embedded programming. It's an area that I've been following ever since I worked at the Oak Ridge National Lab. And I believe Paul had a section on the communication chips getting smaller and smaller. Have you heard about the MavNet cloud? So that's a patented technology from Oak Ridge National Lab, and they're creating a cloud and hardware for drones to communicate on various bands, 20 megabits, you know, to ground, but that's line of sight. Then 10 megabits to the cell towers, which is once again line of sight. And then finally, the same chip can communicate up to the satellites, the 50 baud, I believe. And then on the back end, there's the cloud, aggregating all the data. So that's an area of interest for me. And for Aparna, throat mics. I've watched way too many James Bond movies, and it's not just a fantasy. There's one available on Amazon for $56. So I don't know who asked the question about effective communications with a mic. Those throat mics do work. So not that I've used any of them, but maybe in my dreams.
Yeah. Well, it'd be, you still want to be able to clean it, right? So that throat mic.
No, it's worn on your chest.
Right.
In fact, if you watch any of the public figures going around, now that elections are going on, all the Secret Service guys actually wear throat mics. It's tied with a Velcro around your voice box. It's worn on the outside, and you don't have to speak. You can just vocalize with your throat. It's almost like the African language Sosha, where you just vibrate your vocal cords, and you're trained to come up with full words. At least the person on the other end can understand you.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been used for about 20 years now.
Okay. Look at that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had several conversations. You bring up kind of other protocols and things like that. And we were on a call actually earlier this week where a customer pretty much said, I want an IoT solution that will work anywhere in the world and I don't have to provision it. And that's kind of like, and today that, doesn't exist. Cellular is one of those technologies that get us a large amount of coverage, but it's still not universal. So, the ability to combine protocols, cellular, and the things that are happening with satellite, it just, I love, I'm kind of tracking all of, in 10 years from now, will we all be, using, a satellite system from SpaceX or things like that will that change IoT in ways that we don't understand yet? And actually interesting, we see satellite-based IoT systems today. They're very expensive because you're dealing with, you know, satellite modems and things like that. But I think there's opportunities, you know, and technology as it advances will help us get there. So yeah, it's fascinating. You know, we're seeing multi-combination. I'm looking at the Halo here as well, which I'm assuming that band is a wearable Bluetooth, more than likely Bluetooth low energy. And, you know, it kind of goes back to that model we were saying about your cell phone becomes a gateway. And that data ultimately gets, you know, conditioned or repackaged or what have you, and more than likely is shared back with Amazon in some form or fashion.
Cool, thanks.
I know we're still networking, but I did want to announce the winner of today's prize, which again is brought to you by Crosscom. Thank you, Don and the Crosscom team. It is a Bluetooth sleep headphone and 3D eye mask, and the winner is Conrad DeCruz. So congratulations, Conrad. I'll put my email in the chat box, and if you just send me your address, and I'll send that directly to you.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Don. Don is with Crosscom, right?
Yes.
He is,
yeah.
yes.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. And for whoever asked the question on greenhouse sensors, that was my research in undergraduate school many, many moons ago. And I developed a single board computer and to automate two things for Dow Chemical. One was a greenhouse, and the second one was for an industrial carpet cleaner. So, but my knowledge of those sensors are very, very old now. So I've got to maybe Paul, if you can post your response to the meetup, I can see what's new in those sensors. But thank you, Caroline. This was a great session.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. Thanks to everyone who joins. There's still some great prizes up for the whole month, so stay tuned. But thanks again to Crosscom and Don. Congratulations, Conrad.
Thank you. Thank you. And learned a lot from everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful presentations. And again, this will be posted to RIoT's YouTube channel, and the presentations for those who wanted to share. I know Paul, Tim, and Aparna wanted to share those, so those will be posted to the RIoT meetup page as well. Chris, I saw a note from Tom about sharing a little bit about your background. For those who may not know, Chris is the newest team member of RIoT. So he joined our team 2 weeks ago. So Chris, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I am in Boulder, Colorado. Then I joined RIoT, like Caroline said, a few weeks ago. Previously, if you went back farther, I'm math and computer science, so I've been pretty technical for most of my career. I started a company that went through Y Combinator, so I got to meet with the PayPal mafia guys a few times, which is kind of an exciting time. But more recently, I started the IoT track for Boulder Startup Week, which is a sizable event here in the Boulder, Denver area. But I've just been fascinated with IoT. I did a project with Pete's Coffee years and years ago, trying to build a connected coffee canister, which was, their intention was trying to do distributed real-time inventory for all of their coffee subscribers. At the time, they killed the project because nobody's going to buy a $200 coffee can because it was so early in the IoT days. But that's when I was really hooked about some of the potential. Yeah, so I've been in the space for a long time. I was on the founding team of Misty Robotics. I really bought into the dream of personal robotics and distributed robotics. Where the bigger challenge I think that needs to be solved before that becomes ubiquitous is vision control systems, multimodal interaction. So IoT offers a really interesting path forward to solving some of those things and then be distributed. But all these things I'm super passionate about. So if anybody wants to talk about, edge computing, real-time inventory, robotics, I would love to chat about it. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Chris, as you may be aware, Arrow is headquartered in Denver. So
Yep. We worked. I ran R&D at Sphero before starting Misty.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, I know that we spent a lot of time with the Arrow folks.
Excellent. Probably, yeah, I know my counterparts out there. You probably know as well, but would love to, given that we have such a corporate presence there, I would love to, arrange introductions.
I'd love that. That'd be great.
We've got here in the Carolinas. I think it, given Arrow's involvement in the community out there, I think would be we can amplify it there as well.
Yep. We did a small project with Arrow when we were at Sphero, where we basically had a Bluetooth. I think it was a Nordic chip with Bluetooth that would communicate to the Corvette, and that then had a blow sensor to do throttle. So basically, you could sit in the car, blow in this throttle sensor, and then as you turned your head, it would turn the wheel in the car. It was pretty wild. So the stuff there was pretty fun.
Yeah, we have, if you go to the Arrow website, we have what's called the SAMCAR initiative. Many people may not realize that we actually sponsor an IndyCar team, and it's run by Sam Schmidt. And unfortunately, Sam was paralyzed. He became a quadriplegic in an IndyCar accident, and that was what that blow sensor was for. He actually he actually raced that Corvette to the top of Pikes Peak using we call it, I guess, sip and puff, whatever, blow sensor. And just head movement. So he was able to navigate. And if you've ever driven to the top of Pikes Peak, let's just say that it's intimidating enough when you're not disabled. I couldn't imagine doing it just using head movements. So.
Yeah, that was, I hadn't seen the final result. All I saw was some of the little devices that we were helping with, I suppose. But it was cool stuff for sure.
Cool.
So, Caroline, how much time do we got left?
Technically, I have the 4 till 1. So yeah. Chris, just so you know, all of these wonderful people that spoke today are RIoT sponsors. So Don with CrossCom, Paul. We also had a few others from the Arrow team. Aparna, saw a bunch of your people from Aurora Group. Thanks, Aparna. Of course, DNA Group, Tim Sweet. I saw Becky came on as well. And then I saw Stephen Warwick with Connected Devices was on. Thanks for joining, Stephen. And yeah, if I missed anybody, I'm sorry, it's not intentional, but thanks everybody again for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
It's fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you converted this to make it happen. I don't know, it would have gone as smoothly in March or April as it is now. I think all the technology maybe is caught up, or people have caught on, or it worked out great.
Thanks so much.
Caroline has done a great job, and Amber and the rest of the RIoT team. This is really the smoothest digital one that I've been to.
Big shout out to Amber Cobb as well.
Big shout out to Caroline. She runs all the logistics, guys. She's amazing.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, anything that we can do, better, different. I would love to hear it, because I think that we're looking at more events, and the reality is that this isn't going away anytime soon. So any ideas, Don? I'm really interested in the VR interactions. I'd love to chat with you about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You want the physical distance, but not you want to interact with people, but not get any germs.
Yep. Has anybody gone to any physical events recently? No? There's a lot of shaking heads. Okay.
No, most of them have been canceled.
I went to the grocery store.
That's a physical event.
Is that an event? Maybe it is.
Adventure.
It's a major production. You have to stand in line, separation of 6 feet. They stop you at the door, and everything but frisking. So it's like going through TSA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been doing outdoor having friends for picnics in the backyard has been about as interactive as we've gotten recently.
Yeah, no flying.
No flying, no.
Yeah, because you know, the planes are. I did one flight and there really didn't seem to be social distancing, so not doing that again.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Again, I hope you'll be able to join us next Wednesday, same time, different speakers. Dual Boot will be sponsoring that session with some awesome prizes. So again, thank you to all of our speakers today. Just really great. We really appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks again to Don at CrossCom for the prize and sponsoring this session. And you can find this session on YouTube. So thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Stay
Caroline.
safe.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Have a good rest of
Welcome
the
to the team,
Thanks,
Chris.
everybody.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed
Looking
it.
forward to it.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Take care.